7, 2022. The secretary will call the roll.
Chair LaFaro is absent. Vice Chair Finnerty.
Present.
The secretary is present. Board Member Catalinato is not here. Board Member Mutu.
Present.
Board Member Neely.
Present.
Board Member Fulham.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Very good. Could you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Glad to see Glorian back and
Almost half dancing.
appraised on her miraculous recovery. And I was wondering, has she had a chance to review minutes?
We had no minutes to
No
review.
minutes? Okay, there are no minutes to review. And Janice is not here. We're going to go a little bit out of order. Claire, did you want to just go or?
Yeah, we'll just go in order.
Okay, great. So we're going to jump to item 2,
Yes, which is Southampton Farm Supply.
and that's on for decision.
Representatives are here.
Hi.
You got it. So the decision was in your packets, and also the staff report, which we had previously reviewed. I actually have a newer staff report for you. Oh, is it in the corner? Sorry about that. A newer resolution for you. I just added one more condition.
Thanks, George.
Thank you. Is there an extra one with this?
Yes,
Maybe
there
not.
is. Yes.
So we had reviewed this at the meeting before last. The applicants were anxious to get started because of the condition of the
Yeah.
building. So at the time, we were awaiting the town engineer for the project, and he's a little backed up still. The applicant had responded and gave him some items about 3 weeks ago, but he's still not responded. So I have written it such that the town engineer approval prior to decision. I think it makes sense in this
Okay.
case. They'll have to comply with everything that we
That's
require
one.
this
That's
decision.
one of the conditions.
That's one
Yeah,
of the
because
conditions.
That was my one question when I read it, was
Mhm.
that the engineer did not approve
Correct.
to move forward, so.
Right. So there was a list of items.
Okay.
They think they've addressed them. We're gonna approve the plans that they've resubmitted.
So they can get started.
Right, exactly. But they can't commence work until the town engineer approves the SWIP in this case, and then the approval for the plans themselves.
Okay. Did
So-
you want to briefly review the conditions? Claire?
Yeah, that's what we should do. The only other thing too that I added in here is that there's a corner radius that's gonna be dedicated, and that just has to be done prior to CO, so added
Okay.
that condition too.
That's dedicated to the county, right?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah. So, okay, so the changes, this would be approval for the site plan for Southampton Farm Supply. Changes to the site plan include all changes and modifications as required, compliance with the Department of Public Safety comments, including the fire zone and key box, compliance with the town engineer requirements. Note the amount and location of required interior vegetation on the site plan. This is pursuant to, when you have parking spaces over 50 parking spaces, you have to have interior vegetation. So they need to note that. Indicate additional plantings on plan between Conway 39 and the building. Do you want me just to review that, or do you want to see those
Sure, I think
plantings?
that's
Okay,
fine, Claire.
I'll just say staff. And then the lighting poles, you want them reduced to 10 feet.
Yeah.
So the 2A, B, C, these are general conditions, the HVAC to be screened, the typical lighting fixtures, vested dawn prohibited, all proposed lighting shall be shielded, no public address system, obtain the highway work permit from the highway departments, McGee, the SWIP requirement, the fees, and the inspection. I is just a leftover, actually, I don't think that's applicable to this case. because this is not aqua protection overlay district. Submission of lighting fixture details to be used. Affidavits, 6 sets of plans. 4A is the documentation as required for the corner radius dedication to the Suffolk County for the roadway, and a maintenance bond for the landscaping.
Okay. Mr. Mezaneski, do you have any, hi, welcome. Do you have any comments on have you had a chance to review the approval?
Yeah, just, we should have all the corrections done,
Okay.
just getting them back.
I mean, if you get bogged down in any of this, I know you want to get going on the structure, we can issue a no objection letter to the building department, which allows you to undertake certain activities regarding the building. But in order for us to do that, you're gonna have to give us, sort of bullet out a list of what you want to get done. So they'll, if you get bogged down with this,
Yeah.
it should be pretty straightforward. The county does dedication, what has to happen? The county has to actually accept it, or they just submit it?
Yeah, it's more like it's
It's just a legal document
Yeah, it's a
filed.
legal
They don't have to-
document,
okay.
yeah. I don't think it's as complicated as, it's
Okay.
probably just a little deed or something to go on. But
Yeah.
I'd have to find out. It's been a while since I've done it.
All right, as I say, if you get bogged down, send Claire a list,
The
and
county
we'll,
or whatever's taking
yeah,
this
we'll
one.
adopt a no objection letter at our next meeting.
Sure.
You guys can just know,
The critical
it's
thing.
October.
The critical things like the roof.
Yeah, roof,
That's
you know,
okay. That would be the
you want,
biggest,
Right,
especially
exactly,
before
yeah.
winter.
we're really glad you're doing the right thing with that structure.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the board?
Nope.
I think we're good to go. Do we have a motion for approval?
Motion.
Motion by George.
Second.
Second by Gloria, and all in favor, aye, opposed,
Aye.
abstentions. And we have 5 yes, 2 absent? Yep,
Yes.
got that right.
Great.
Thanks a lot for coming in.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Claire, you gonna keep going with your
yeah.
Berkshire? Item 3 on the agenda is Berkshire.
Yeah,
Or
this is to
east.
release the maintenance bond on this site plan. They've done all the work. It's in good health for the last 2 years, so I'm recommending the release of the maintenance bond.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Gloria,
Second.
second by George, all in favor, aye, opposed, abstentions, 5 yes.
So CVS, this was to retain a traffic consultant. We've received an updated traffic study, which I thought I sent to you. Does anybody remember if I did?
Oh, yes.
Okay. It's an updated traffic study. They are doing the cross-access to the east, which is
Okay.
great. But we just need a traffic consultant on your behalf to review it. So we're getting some estimates.
Okay.
I haven't received them yet, so we're gonna push this off to November 10th on this
So
one. So
that's-
this is
November-
off.
that's
So
why there
this is
was-
off.
So that's why there was no resolution this week. We
Correct.
haven't gotten the,
I haven't gotten I expect 2 in the next week, so we're
Okay.
just
Well,
waiting on a
Claire, did you
couple.
get my voicemail this morning on the other traffic consultant?
For Lewis?
Lewis,
really?
yeah.
Yeah, that's all being done. We're gonna have him in on November 10th.
On November 10th?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
He's
great.
expecting to do the work. And so whenever I get a report from him, I'll send it to you ahead of time.
Great, great.
So that's good. And just so you know, my other one of my other ones are off. I'm just gonna let you know now. It's Butter Lane Farm, number 20. That's off the agenda.
20, okay.
You can stay there, so I'll just do my 2 quick. sections.
Okay.
Two.
Okay.
Anthony, you're going to jump in? Are you jumping back to
We're gonna,
the,
yeah, we're gonna just go back in order then.
okay, is that Canal?
Number 5, Luciano.
Number 5.
That's actually just going to be an extension of the action deadline for the pre-application report until November 17th.
November 17th, very good. Do we have a motion?
motion.
Motion by Gloria and second by Kate, all in favor?
Aye.
5, opposed, abstentions, 5 yes, 2 absent. That's Luciano.
Yep. And then Production Holding is another one for an adopted pre-application report, and that's gonna be an extension of the action deadline until November 10th.
November 10th.
And
Do we-
which one is this, Anthony?
Number 6?
Six.
Number 6, okay.
Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Gloria, second by Kate, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstentions, 5 yes, 2 absent. Anthony, are you doing, did you want to do Canal? Oh, no, that's Canal. What am I talking about? Never mind.
So my next one, I think we're going in order, right? Number
Yes.
7?
We'll
Okay.
jump in. You want to do Liberty Real?
Yes, and
Okay. Item 7.
Wayne will be right back. He's just giving me a copy of it, which I forgot to give to him. Poor guy.
What do we do?
So I wanted to get this to you. The action deadline on this is for November 10th. And there's a couple this is basically taking a property that was a house, even though it's in the HB zoning district, and turning it into a commercial, special trade contractor use. I believe it's associated, and we can verify with Wayne, with the
Liberty, yeah.
Across the street.
Metalworks, which is across the street.
I know we got a letter in on that, but I don't know where it's not, is it that house we see in the aerial, or is it?
There is a house here, but I think this right-of-way here
Oh.
is the owner
Okay.
of the property that in question.
It's a short
From the,
street.
Because they want to keep the house as an office and an apartment, am I remembering
Right.
correctly?
Yeah, and that is, I haven't spoken to the town chief building inspector, but existing house is permitted, but an apartment, if you then propose an apartment, you'd have to either change from one non-conforming use to, it's very complicated, because it's not a non-conforming use.
Oh,
But an apartment is not as of right in the HB zoning district at all.
so they would have to go to the ZBA.
I think so.
Yeah.
And this,
Even though the intention might be the same, having residential, I just think it should be created in such a way where it's very separate, because you don't know if there'd be kids at the apartment or not, so.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it seems like they're trying to do an awful lot of things on one piece of property that are not necessarily aligned with each other.
Compatible, yeah.
A
Mhm.
contractor's building an office and an apartment
Mm-hmm,
in a highway business zone.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was,
So it seems a little bit challenging from my perspective.
mm-hmm.
I don't even know if they're the flow for,
Se-
sewage flow, right?
Yeah,
Oh, that's a good question.
So we'll get some answers.
and, I mean, it also seems that if they want to reopen County Road 39, that's
Right.
potentially another challenge.
Yeah, do they have an existing curb cut to
No.
39?
Mm-mm.
But I think that was one of their requests.
Well, they have it shown here as a touch.
I think for ingress only, right?
There's no,
Oh, okay.
there's nothing here now, but the proposal is to make it two-way, I think.
They, I don't want to speak for the county, but they're not eager to have additional curb cuts
No.
on 39,
No.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
And that's pretty close to the traffic light
Right.
up the road a
just
piece.
before David White's.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so that's a kind of that's a potential backup section
Oh,
of
it
County Road
always is.
39.
Always is.
Yeah.
Even more than yesterday.
Is
I
it
was so glad I was in my
typical to
house and not
have
on the
the
road.
applicant
Yesterday around
doing
5:30, yeah, I
beyond
was on the road.
pre-submission to have
Is that
them
here?
get those approvals?
There we go.
Who's shut the lights off?
Grand entrance.
Lights out,
Oh, no.
long way.
I think reducing curb cuts has been the goal on 39.
out?
There you go.
Thank you.
That's funny.
It's over?
Halloween's almost upon us.
So Claire, is it typical for them to get those pre-approvals or at least have conversations with the county on the road access as well as
Yeah.
the sanitary flow prior to actual submission?
Mm-hmm, that could be.
Wayne, we jumped in on Liberty Real.
Liberty,
If you want to
come up?
come on up and help us out.
You want to sit
You gotta
here?
use it,
They can
yeah,
hear
table's
you.
fine. We have it on the, we have it
Overhead.
up on the screen.
Just so you know, Wayne, the deadline is November 10th, so I wanted to see if the board had.
Well, I really appreciate you jumping in.
Yeah, rather than, I thought this one had some issues, so I wanted to hear the planning boards and refine the report for you. So they initially, there was the issue about the use, the house going to an apartment and office. And the intensity, we talked about, is it associated with the Liberty Ironworks across the street?
It is the same principle, yes.
Okay,
And the intent is, there's a lot of activities that occur outside on the other property, and this is to put basically all of the storage and materials inside. And based on we got that letter from the neighbors, and actual fabrication will not be taking place on this site. It's all gonna be taking place on the existing site. So this is gonna be primarily storage of the materials
In the new building?
in the building, in the new building, which are all delivered and sit outside on the other property. The other thing it does is provides parking for some of the employees that has been happening haphazardly, and so that's what's going on.
I think there was some question about the apartment use over the house.
It's intended to be for his manager.
Okay, so is it two dwelling?
You don't want workforce housing?
We do.
Just a question.
Just a question.
Do you have, is it two separate dwelling units? In other words?
No,
the
it's
house-
one, and what they're gonna do is just convert the second floor to an apartment.
So the
and
first floor will
Keep the first
be
floor for office for
office,
this.
okay, got it.
For this facility.
do you
It's
want
not
me
gonna be a separate rental.
So that settles the flow, because you were thinking two dwelling units under.
No.
Okay.
And have there been conversations with the county about the curb cut onto 39?
This is just a pre-app, but I can tell you this property has been subject to this board's review and others since John Deegan Senior had owned it. And I recall, as a planner, reviewing a site plan on this many years back. So it's been kicking around, but nothing's ever moved forward until now. In fact, as Claire has indicated, you know, there's outdoor use, you can see it on the aerial photographs, and code enforcement's been on their case more recently, but through time, on and off through time, to basically come in, excuse me, and complete the site plan, which has been the hardest part.
So Wayne, just to confirm, they currently don't have access onto 39.
They do,
They do.
yeah, they physically do.
There is a
The dirt
curb
road?
cut there?
Can we
It's
see the
hard to
curb
see.
cut
Curb
again,
cut,
Claire?
but they
No.
drive,
It's an informal,
there's no curbs there, so they just drive
Right.
across
Right.
onto the
Oh, I
property.
see.
Right, yeah. I remember with the widening, there were some issues along there because there
I-
aren't any curbs.
You know, maybe they did or didn't, but I don't think so.
Okay.
But they do access, whether they're jumping a curb or not, I don't know, but they do access.
No, I think you're right. There isn't a curb there, I think.
The property immediately to the west is a recharge basin. So,
Okay.
I don't know if the county would necessarily, and then it comes to the intersection. So I don't think the county would have curbed that. But
Right.
my recollection is there's no curbs as you go down to Nardi and the other
Yeah,
site
I'm
as
pretty
well.
sure that there isn't.
There isn't, yeah.
No, I just,
But certainly, the plan will have to include, I don't know if we show it, but we're aware that, you know, that should be a comment, that they'll have to get the curb cut and the sidewalk and the whole north, you know.
oh,
because
that's
you know,
right.
the county's been trying to reduce curb cuts, but that's up to them. The parking issue, you said it'd be for employee parking. You don't think there'd be a lot of trucks, or, I mean, do they have a lot of heavy trucks, traffic or anything like that?
Well, they do,
Okay.
but I will get clarification, you know, when we submit the final, what trucks will actually be accessing the site.
I'm just
There's
thinking of
gonna
that
be
neighbor.
deliveries of steel.
Right, that neighbor across the street, just trying to see how we could minimize, concerns he might have.
Well,
But
it's
that's-
Flying Point Road, a public road that is
Right.
commercial.
Right.
I mean,
Right. No, it's a public road.
yeah, and this is commercially zoned property, so he's aware that it's been zoned commercial. You know, whether it's this use or other use. I mean, you just raised the point, is the county's looking to reduce curb cuts, so where should we put it? On the back road?
Right. That's,
So here, I think you at least maybe lessen, you know, because if someone's gonna go west, they're not gonna go out on Flying Point. They're gonna make the right-hand turn out on County Road 39.
right.
I think going east, they're gonna use a traffic light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They wanna go east, or
Well, you know what it's like getting into that lane.
Depends on when you're going, because
Bowers
the
Lane,
traffic stopped.
Or Flank Point Bowers.
Right, and ideally, going up to the traffic light
Yeah.
is the best thing. No, I just thinking, and you're right, it's, you know, I'm sure when the gentleman bought his property, it was across the street from what's right there right now, so, but just trying to think of ways we could.
Yeah, his property's non-conforming with multiple buildings and multiple dwellings. His driveway happens to be opposite where our proposed access is, but
Well, putting all the uses indoors is gonna be a big help, all the storage, you know.
yeah, and the activities they described are all happening over here, not on this property. There's not gonna be any outdoor speakers or manufacturing, you know, the welding, no welding. Like I said, I tried to clarify it after that letter, is primarily this would be storage for the raw materials, the steel that is necessary.
Do you want me to go through the report and
Sure.
then,
Yeah.
and if you want, I took some
Hit-
notes, so
hit
we
the
can
highlights,
add-
as they
Yeah,
say.
exactly. So it's a 6,000 square foot prefab building for a special trade contractor use with basements. Pre-submission conference held on September 22nd. There were no comments received at the conference. Comments received during the provided 30-day written comment period. Parcel currently used for parking for employees for Liberty Ironworks project will increase traffic and noise on an already heavily trafficked road. Flying Point Road is currently used as a cut-through and the vehicles travel at high speeds, which is dangerous. Use will impact Flying Point Road, which is a residential street. Require traffic study concerned with noise. Already hear the PA and other noise from the existing Liberty Steel facility. Unclear what the use will be. Appears metal fabrication is not a permitted use. Metal fabrication has the potential for environmental contamination. Impact on adjacent recharge basin. Planning board should take lead agency. Impact on the neighboring historic structures. The application proceeds. Items to be submitted: full site plan special exception application, site plan engineering, elevation, landscaping, and lighting information submitted.
Claire, could I stop you for 1 second?
Sure.
In the project description,
Mhm.
if we just talk about it as it being a contractor's building.
Mhm.
What Wayne has been telling us is that they're gonna use it for themselves. It's not that they're going to be renting it out to third parties.
No, but the use under the code is a special trade contractor. That's the category it fits under, because that's what they do, is the material, they take it off-site and install it on houses. And that's, under the SIC code, it comes under a special trade contractor. So-
But I was reading that as they were going to potentially be renting that to third,
No, and I
additional.
don't think Claire is saying that. but-
No,
No,
like
I-
we could say one special trade
Yeah.
contractor use.
Mhm.
Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
because that to me was sort of adding another
With the accessory.
thing to be on that property.
Mhm.
There's a lot to be said for cleaning up this property in general.
Yep.
Like I said, I see it as an opportunity for us to finally get something done.
Okay, I will project.
No, it's good to clarify the use of what's gonna be proposed. So I do say the site is currently being utilized as a contractor yard and has received violations. Unlisted actions, secra is to be completed prior to deeming the site plan complete. Proposed access from the site, this is the two questions, right? It's the curb cuts onto County Road 39 for safety and concerned about the access on Flying Point Road as it's residential in nature. Traffic study for the project be required. You good with that? The site plan indicates.
Is that something the board desires? Claire's suggesting that, a traffic study on the impact of
Based on the.
turning movements.
Do you think on the volume, on the?
Analysis?
Well-
I mean, if there is access onto 39, I think a study is more critical, because I think then you have to really look at it hard. But again, that's a county decision about the access on 39. I don't see it as a high-volume location, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know exactly what kind of study we'd be looking for. Engineering plans, obviously, for getting in and out.
We're
Claire, you
probably gonna
suggested
recommend-
analysis versus a study. Can you explain what your interpretation of the difference, or if there's an actual definition on the book someplace?
Yeah, exactly. Analysis would be someone, an engineer taking a look at it. It's not an in-depth traffic counts, and that would be very appropriate, as Tom is saying, if it's a high-intense use. I think we're just kind of looking at the safety of the curb cut on County Road 39, which would be more of an analysis of that issue. But it would be up to the
The
board.
engineer, they're probably gonna recommend that we preclude eastbound traffic.
No
direct
left
into it,
hand
Yeah,
turns.
Only westbound
Yeah.
only.
which is common on the North Highway,
Mhm.
so it's good to come from an engineer.
Mhm. Okay,
I
so,
think we have to deal with these issues anyway with.
With the county,
the
yeah.
Suffolk
Yeah.
County
Right.
Department of Public
Redundant.
Works, so.
But
Right.
I think we should also look at Flying Point Road access, just from an engineering standpoint, and not necessarily traffic counts, but just depending upon the size of the trucks getting in and out, if they're gonna be using Flying Point.
mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I would support a study in this case, because County Road 39 is a total mess in the first place. Anything that we're adding
After
really needs to be
yesterday.
considering that. And Wayne's right, with the DPW, they're gonna require it anyway, so we might as well be in solidarity there and just require it on our end.
Right, I would, maybe, I don't know if we can work with the county, see what they say about that.
Mhm.
It's interesting, other places, when there's an opportunity to get access off a back road, the county will come in and say they don't want access on
Mhm.
County Road 39.
They don't
Mm.
want,
Yeah, that's what they've done in other sites.
right, and we, as we know, we've got a access management plan that, calls for linking private parking lots to reduce curb cuts on 39.
Mhm.
I would just say that, this is related to the facility across the street. If you were to
Mm.
eliminate that and make them, simple traffic to come in and around and all the way down Flying Point Road, would probably promote more traffic and, issues than just merely trying to cross the road. is what
And a
they
study will
do.
tell us that.
Yeah.
Right,
Oh,
so that's important.
Well,
A question I had too
An
is, if
engineering-
the employee parking is happening there, how do people safely get across the street to the
Good question.
facility? Because that's really the highest safety concern, I think.
Good point.
Do they just, jog
think they
across the
walk.
street right now?
Well, I think they walk across the street
Sure.
because the
Right.
traffic stopped and,
Right.
But you've got,
I don't know.
you've got
We'll
all the
investigate that.
traffic turning from David White's going east and west, so.
I mean, that's likely what will happen. I mean, there's a
Well,
crosswalk
there is a
up at David
signalized-
White's, but
There is a signalized in the morning, there is a signalized intersection not that far. I see pedestrians cross all the time.
Mhm.
That's the advantage of it.
Yeah, I guess I
Right.
don't, I see the one on North Main, people walking across, but I don't use David White's that often, because
Yeah, no,
you
David
get stuck
White's-
for too many lights
There's a lot
going
of people
south.
going, actually to and from the jitney, they'll drop a car at the Omni, they'll be walking to the train, I see them pulling suitcases,
You know, I usually see them on from North Main
Yeah,
with the
Yeah, but Somewhere
suitcases.
they gotta cross the road.
yeah.
Yeah,
So Claire, maybe you could have a conversation with, one of the firms we work with or something and bring up some of these issues, pedestrian crossing, kind of the pros and cons of having two driveways opposite each other for if they want to go across the road.
I think in the first instance, you're just suggesting what we should be doing
Mhm.
with our application when it comes in. If you want somebody to review that,
So-
then that'll be your discussion when we submit that. But
Okay,
Mhm.
we're
Yeah.
certainly gonna get an engineer involved in this.
right, okay.
Mhm. No, that's appropriate. So related to that, though, is the number of employees, I guess, Liberty Works has. So we'd have, if you can get that for next, the next meeting, I can put it right in here, so
Okay.
that'd be great. So that's number 4, basically, on that one, too. So you're pretty much separating the office and the house as access. You're gonna make it appear like a house, right, with its own little driveway?
Let's, Yeah, it's gonna stay a house.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no intent to really change
Mhm.
outward appearance of the house, just change the use in the interior. And it was proposed that, I see on the plan, is to keep the driveway, you see proposed driveway?
Right, exactly. Okay. So that's basically for the house itself, not really basically the office, they'll park in the parking lot?
Correct.
Okay, that's good. Would you have to upgrade the sanitary system, actually? I didn't mention that.
Yes,
Okay.
I think there was a plan for the whole, it's an IA system. I see the calculations are all on the plan.
Okay, good. So the residential use, I just bring it up, I don't know the answer, but I think you might have to go to ZBA on that, for the use.
I'll check with the building inspector.
Yeah,
The
that makes
house must
sense.
have a CO though, no?
Yeah, it's,
The house has a CO, but
Pre-existing
it says
house.
single-family residence, and now it's becoming an office. I'm
Oh.
not office, accessory
Apartment.
apartments.
Accessory apartment.
So it's a different use. To me, it would be a different use, but that would be up to the building inspector. And then the use we talked about, right, the special K contractor, the storage, a petition will be required. Okay, this is an issue I brought up, and I've asked the building inspectors, because I've never seen a building built, it's either 0 or 15, like I've seen a setback of 15, and they came back and said it depends what the buildings are made out of. So, either that has to be adjusted if the construction material is inappropriate, or it has to be 15 feet, so that's what brought it up as an issue. It is a large-looking building, so I'm not quite sure. So they're feeling that this is necessary for the storage
Correct.
use? Okay. And then the appearance of the building, let me get to that. Do you know why there's 2 overhead doors on the south elevation if there's not gonna be any access?
these, getting the architect to nail them down, but they're good questions.
Okay. So the one side would be the overhead doors, they face the parking lot, right? So the other side is the one I have the question of. Do you want some type of window features, breaking this up?
Mike, what type of screening are we gonna have on the North Highway? That's,
Well, it's vegetated now, so I would suggest we keep a lot of the vegetation.
oh, I know there's vegetation, look, I
The
thought it.
plan shows 16-foot, or green giant arborvitae along the entire frontage and as well on the easterly side. And then maintain red cedar along the recharge basin and the other parcel that's being used commercially to the west.
So that will replace the existing vegetation?
Yeah, it's not substantial
Yeah,
along the
that's
frontage if you go out there, but that was what was proposed. He wants to screen it from the highway.
Right.
In fact, his first plan had all the parking in the front yard.
Oh.
And they convinced him, that's not allowed.
But, I mean, another option is to move the arborvitae back toward the building and maintain, you know, how on
10
the,
feet.
a lot of the site plans, there's a sort of a lawn area, sort of a continuation. Has he looked at that, or thought about that at all?
You know, this is their first concept, and
Okay.
if you think we should look at it, we'll look at it.
Because
I
the
I
Green
don't
Giants
see
would
a
screen the
problem with that.
building, and you'd have a nice lawn, which would sort of line up with a lot of the sites you have on, think of the North Highway, the different, I mean, everyone starts using the lawn, of course, as display, but in this case, I don't think that would be an issue.
Okay.
Because we put the Statue of Liberty out there on occasion, but that's it.
Okay, so the arborvitae with some lawn in the front, not retaining the natural vegetation in the front.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you want the arborvitae not, as he's proposing along the property line, you want it shifted back towards the
Maybe
building.
to allow some lawn.
Okay.
It's just an idea.
Is that a trailer in the lower right or something? Mobile home or something?
Yeah, that was
So that would,
RV.
okay. Looks
What
like
did they
that
go?
would, that would
From
go.
the Deegan family.
Yeah.
Okay.
That will go. Everything you see will go.
Right.
All the vehicles
So-
or whatever's out there, storage.
Mishmash. Okay.
Dennis, you wouldn't advocate in this case, since it is just a storage unit that's gonna have the garage doors facing the south, that you just leave some of that natural vegetation as a buffer?
No, I don't think they're gonna have the garage doors on the south. Are you?
No,
gonna-
they
on the
won't.
north
I mean,
side.
on the
Yeah.
north side,
They-
that's
they
what
can
I was
eliminate
saying.
those, yeah.
So that you would actually, I said south, but I meant north, so leaving the natural vegetation instead of having the arborvitae there.
I guess it depends upon how much screening the natural vegetation
I
would
seem to
provide.
remember the
Right.
natural vegetation's almost pretty scraggly. It's
It
like
is.
choke cherries and Russian olives.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's
It's
successional
successional growth.
Invasive.
growth. This was cleared at
Yeah.
some time in the past, so.
I can take a look, though, before.
I mean, you think it's worth saving, definitely, but
Mm-hmm.
if not, might benefit to have a lawn.
Okay. My next issue is the dumpster has to be greater than 5 feet from the house, so
Mhm.
that should be good. The site has extensive outdoor storage, so you're not proposing any outdoor storage with those?
No.
Okay, great. So, and then referrals, typical referrals, and a public hearing, because there's public interest. So I'm going to update this for the next meeting, send it to you
You don't
ahead of
want us to
time.
act on this now?
Huh?
You want us to act on this?
I think it's better just to
Okay.
tie it up. I'll look at the vegetation,
Okay.
answer that
That's
question.
fine, she asked for a couple clarifications, I'll
Yeah.
get it to Clara.
Then we can put
She
it
can
in there.
incorporate those.
Would there be any overnight storage? Or any of the trucks or anything be parked there overnight?
Probably, you know, company trucks will be.
That's what I meant, yeah.
I would assume.
Okay, so no action. Claire's doing wireless towers, number 8.
Yes, my next one is the wireless towers in West Hampton. This one again, actually the deadline on this is November 17th, but I wanted just to get, to go over it, have
Great.
any questions. We'll go over it briefly, we don't have to go over it in detail. But I also was waiting for public comments to come through on this one, so we just got them.
Hi, Bailey.
Hi.
Do you have enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here you go.
Thank you.
So this, you last seen, there was a public hearing on September 22nd. There were some public comments at the hearing and during of the written comment period. It was this application, let's get to it. This proposes a 105-foot concealment tower on the corner of the property that is owned by the West Hampton Cemetery Association. It is adjacent to a CPF open space parcel to the north, and then this is the restaurant, Bowie One, right here. So the proposal is for 105. It's going to hold up to 5 carriers proposed on the project. And so during the public comment period, the hearing and the public comment period, following were the issues, they were against the project, does not meet the standards, located next to CPF property, open spaces, avoidance area, characters changing, other sites where this could be located, will cut down 20 trees, need trees, visual impacts, no gap in service, unnecessary. Suffolk County Water Tower has coverage. Potential large impact for SECRA adjacent to residences. Revenue stream for cemetery. Oppose the special exception application. Will decrease value of residential lands documented. Impact of cell tower radiation on health, especially in children. Deny application. No issues with cell service in adjacent neighborhood. Other alternative locations. Use smaller compact telephone mounts. Cemetery can raise money in another manner. Visual impacts and potential impacts on the environment, including animals. The project was classified as an unlisted action. The planning board issued a negative declaration on the action on August 11th, 2022. With regard to referrals, we haven't gotten a lot of them back, though there's not a lot of referrals in this case. I'm awaiting the town engineer, the fire district, and the public safety have the typical requirements of street numbers and is served by public service water mains and fire hydrants. So this is the standards. There's a lot of them here. I don't want to bog you down on this. I probably should have highlighted them for you. But the setbacks compliance standard is that it's located in the CR 40 zoning district as a special exception. It's 132,102 square feet. The parcel is vacant with a plan to use the parcel for a cemetery. At this time, this first use in the parcel meets the code. For lot size, it's, as I said before, the square footage. The setback shall be taken from the entire site. Inventory of existing sites. So they've submitted the information about the adjacent cell towers in the area, and that was part of the analysis. For D, building permit will need to be secured, the above standard met. E, building permits will need to be secured. So some of these are redundant. F is the same. G is the measurements. Spec is met. Franchises, a building permit needs to be secured. The signs, they show this on the plans, and then the standard will be met. The near warning signs, building base station, see section 330, 309. Approval considered conforming use. So building permit to be secured for L and M also. Special exception standards. These standards are met. So I'm not going to go through these. These are all very, it's not near a church or school, so all these standards are being met, A through M. And then becomes the more specific standards of the special exception. So A is that it's a special exception process. B is the pre-submission that was adopted November 21st, 2019. C is the factors granting it. So it is a wireless support structure, unipole, proposed 105 feet tall, the standards met. And I just state that the current federal regulations, once constructed, they will be eligible for 2 extensions of 10 feet for a total of 20. But as far as I know, in the application, it's not proposed at this time to be extended. The proximity of the support structures to residential structures. So it meets the setback, it's 300%. The setback would be 315, and the setback is 391. So they meet the residential setback.
Claire,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, C, going back up one to C1.
Yeah.
You said the pool can accommodate up to 4 or 5 carriers?
4.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
And then, so to the second part of this is the variance your request that is being requested. So the setback here to the residential property line to the north is 20 feet to the north and 24 feet to the east. And they're asking for that variance, which would be 105 feet. Because it is a open space parcel, no residences would ever be constructed there. And given the setback to the residential, it meets the intent of the section. The planning board has the ability to grant that variance. So the standard is met. So nature of uses on the adjacent properties. I didn't get into this a little bit. I will though. Obviously, the property to the north is a parkland, open space. To the west is the restaurant. To the south is that car dealership, I guess. Yeah. So I'll speak to that a little bit more there. One question, maybe you want to keep the trees, they just clear what they need to get access to the property. So maybe talk about the trees and leave them, because I think they assist.
Maybe
if
they could submit a plan.
Yeah, just show what's
Clearing
going
plan.
to stay.
Yeah.
And maybe some intention of, if the cemetery does come in, what they are intending to do. Because even like a little swath here would help in terms of
Yeah,
blocking it a little bit.
I think submit a plan, and then prior to the building permit project limiting fence, you know, one of those temporary
We
mesh.
can for the facility, and then the cemetery obviously
Yeah.
has an intention to clear the lot at some point in time. But we can give a limits of clearing for the proposed facility,
Yeah,
just
that would be
include just the
good.
driveway and the compound area.
That would
Okay.
help us, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So that's good. The color gray, silver, blue, that's typical. It blends in with the
Mhm.
sky then. So I haven't identified anything else in here, as being a huge issue. The lighting should be conforming. That's on page 13. And then the rest of it talks about the setbacks. So, and Cindy has
Are we
questions.
on action deadline?
No. But if you're inclined, I can write something up for the next meeting, or the
Okay.
17th. That's
17th.
our Tuesday.
Bailey, did you
available
have
dates.
any response to any of these?
No. I
Pretty
don't have-
straightforward.
Yeah, and I definitely can provide some sort of additional details
Also,
for
could you just state your name for the record? so-
Bailey Larkin with Bennett and Reed, offices at 212 Windmill Lane in Southampton.
Yeah, I mean, Claire, I'm assuming that the applicant provided documentation of why there is a cell.
Yes, there's a
Li-
big
li-
RF analysis.
Yeah,
because.
because-
analysis.
That's standard. That's all
Yeah,
required.
And we looked
But
at that
the-
at Secra.
My point is that the people who are saying no,
Mhm.
that most of what we hear, we all say, but if you've got a dead area,
It might not necessarily be here. I mean, people are saying, oh, my cell service is fine, we don't.
Mhm.
But in Spionk or someplace, you might have a dead area. so.
Yeah, no, it does show the gap. We
Mhm.
analyzed that at the
Yeah.
Secra, at time of Secra, so we have that documentation
okay,
file.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
You had a note here under B, oh no, it was, BE2. Staff response discuss on the landscaping.
Yeah, the
Was that-
landscape, the trees, whether to retain the trees or not.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Thank
that's
you.
good. So I'll add some additional language with that. I'll highlight any changes from the meeting, to the next meeting, okay? So there's no action.
Okay,
Thanks, Claire.
Bailey, thanks for coming in.
No problem. Thank you.
Anthony, you gonna jump in with canal? Okay. Good stuff.
Charles, there's probably a few people in Zoom on this one. Elizabeth Weatherby. Hello?
It's Kevin.
No, Kevin, sorry about that, Kevin.
Charles was here before. Charles
There's
is
always-
always.
Next few minutes, we didn't think there was.
You did a switch.
Okay.
Throw them in when they pop up.
I'll let you know.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Charles.
Does anybody want a hard copy?
this is a new version. What you have is a new version, that's.
Whatever, and I apologize, I sent it to you guys yesterday. I was doing research on this, but it's the one I sent yesterday. I have hard
But
copies.
it's not in the packet, is my point.
It's not in the packet.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll take
Yes,
it.
please.
So
Yeah.
we'll take paper.
Am I the only
Can
planet
pass
that
it.
does this, by the way?
Thank you. You're appreciated. I'll give one for Greg.
There's at least a whole tree here.
It's more detailed than it was last time. And as he's doing that, I'll just say to the board, so obviously in September, we had a discussion on the secret review for this, and then some questions and comments came up. They provided some additional information. I did some research as part of this, so.
proceed while we're doing it? You want to proceed while we're doing it?
Yeah, I think, Anthony, we could start going through the report. and
Sure, we can do that.
Might take a little bit for Charles to get.
Yeah, so just up here, I have the aerial photograph reminder of where the properties are. You have the DPW maintenance yard over here. These are the subject properties that make up the 4.9 acre subject site. And then further to the east, which is not in the aerial, is the, well, the documents always say LIPA substations, but PSEG, I'm not sure, we'll have to fix that. Sunrise Highway to the north, and then some residents on the opposite side of the road there. It's just another aerial to sort of give you town land.
For the meeting?
There would be a few people. There's Elizabeth Weatherby, I believe. They should raise their hand, hopefully, if.
Is there anybody with their hands raised?
They're coming in.
Okay.
They're on their way.
Okay, they're beginning to come in there. And I have the site plan up here as a reminder that it's 30 battery enclosures with 24 battery modules and all the obvious equipment that goes with the battery storage facility, access, the 2 drainage ponds that are proposed, some additional landscaping, the limits of clearing, and the natural vegetation that's proposed to remain along the easterly and southerly property boundaries. You can hear? Okay. So last time we went through the secret review and some questions popped up. And this is good. This is the planning board's first large-scale application. And so when we went through the secret, the planning board asked for the applicant to provide some additional information for me to do some additional research and then to amend the secret documents, the parts 2 and 3 accordingly. My part 3 actually indicates the part 2, so I won't go through the part 2 separately. I could just do it for my part 3, which is much easier. So the first one was on the impacts to land, and we did identify that would be small to moderate impacts. Obviously, any development will have some type of impact on land, but it was determined that the impacts would not be significant based on the following. And there's where I made some changes. So we got some information about the clearing. So it's already cleared 0.72 of an acre, and the applicant proposes to remove another 2.6, and will maintain 1.55 acres of natural vegetation, largely around the perimeter of the property. So the planning board asked for the clarification on how much vegetation is staying up and how much is being removed. The subject property is 4.9 acres and well over the minimum of 3 acres, 120,000 square feet required by the special exception standards. Further, the property is not located in an avoidance area, so the environmental impacts would be less as if it was, near wetlands or a greenbelt open space area, ag land. And then I also added the installation of underground utilities, which is another issue on impact on land. In this case, the applicant is using directional boring, which they indicated is horizontal directional drilling. So basically, drill and torpedo. And so there'll be little to no above ground, and there won't be any trenching or anything like that. So we made sure that was in there. And then, of course, and I will add this in, I don't know why it's in, the applicant's going to be subject to a speedies permit from the DEC, because it's over an acre of land of disturbance, and stormwater management plan approval from the engineer. So as it relates to stormwater management, they have to be approved plans approved by the engineer as well, and I want to put that in here that for some reason I left out. So I think with that analysis, I think I'm comfortable saying that the impacts on land would be small, but not significant. Impacts on geological features, there are no particular geologic features on this property. Impact on surface water, groundwater, and flooding. So, big discussion around the nature of the materials within the battery, if there's a fire, if there's anything that compromises the integrity of the system, any contaminants that could work its way into the surface waters or the groundwater. So that was a big issue for the board. So of course, you know, lithium itself is not toxic, and the applicant indicates that they use no rare earth toxic metals. Lithium itself is not toxic, and the phosphate salts are not very soluble. But a little research on lithium-ion batteries, I had some questions that I think that we should ask, especially with the planning board's concerns that were raised. My reading is that these lithium-ion batteries do contain lead, especially, and if they're not disposed of or recycled properly, they could become an issue. My research shows that they're also made of cobalt, nickel, and manganese, which are toxic. So I wanted some clarification as to any of those materials within the battery system.
Well, that's why they have to be specially.
With the containments, of
Yes,
course.
yes.
And that's part of the mitigation, by the way.
Mhm.
Even if there is something in there, we'd want to make sure, but we want to know what the materials are,
Right.
obviously.
Yeah, maybe I can clarify. This is Custody Run Energy, we're the developer here. So there are, and this causes a lot of confusion with
Sir,
with
could you give us your
people.
name?
Hold on one second.
Yeah, Gus Hadidi, the managing director at Run Energy, we're the developer, the principal for this project.
I think they got more than one person in the same room for the computer.
No, everyone here is, we've got Elizabeth Weatherby, Kevin Mahar, those are our environmental consultants, and then Andrew Filipazzi is our counsel supporting us in this project, and then John O'Hara on the calls as well with Ryan Energy.
Okay, so he was going to
Yeah.
clarify about the chemicals in the battery?
That's right. So this causes a lot of confusion for people. So there are two types of lithium-ion batteries. There is the NMC battery and there's the LFP battery. And based on the research that Anthony did, that's right, the NMC batteries do contain, cobalt or manganese. But the type of batteries that we're using are LFP batteries, and we specifically are utilizing LFP batteries because they're not hazardous. They do not contain any hazardous material, any rare earth metal materials. And obviously we did this, and this is at an expense to our project because it increases the surface area, and also the price is a little bit more expensive. So just to clarify that the batteries that we are using are LFP batteries. The three primary components are lithium, phosphate, and iron, which are, all three are not hazardous materials. And as indicated in our response that was sent to you, lithium is not hazardous, phosphate is not soluble, and iron, obviously you find it everywhere. So this is just, I just wanted to clarify that there is absolutely no NMC batteries being used on our site.
Good, so that's good information. So we should identify the specific battery type.
The battery type and write that into the
And it should, right on, I think on the site plan, it's somewhere on the site plan, it does say LFP batteries.
I appreciate that. I'm sure it does. But this is still very new to the board, so, you see these things, you just want to make sure they're accurate. So I appreciate that, that response. And to that point, obviously, the units themselves will be properly encapsulated, right, in the event there's any type of exposure, fire damage,
That's
something like that.
absolutely right. And, I can let John talk a little bit about structurally how these modules are housed, and he can give you a detailed explanation, just to give you
We'll get to that because we have more on the fires part of it too, so we'll get some more input there. So that's good, so we will put that in the resolution, into the report here. And then some other notes, it's approximately 700 feet east of the Shinnecock Canal, and there's no wetlands on or adjacent to the site, so surface waters are not immediately adjacent to the site. And of course, as I said before, there'll be a SWIP plan reviewed by the town engineer to ensure that all stormwater is contained on site. And as per the applicant, they're not using any potable water, and they will not be discharging any processed water. They've included some green infrastructure, which reduces the amount of runoff. That includes maintaining some of the natural vegetation on the property, as well as the drainage basins. Again, as it relates to flooding, the property is not located within the FEMA flood zone 100-year, 500-year plain. And the applicant did provide some other additional information indicating that the project would withstand wind speeds of 147 miles an hour. And they also provided, and I will put in here, percolation analysis test results, and showing that there's a good flow over there. So we want to make sure I put that in there. And I think it was sent to this board as well. And they also indicated that the grass swells on the property, to help as part of the whole erosion control and sediment control plan. So with some changes there that we just noted, I think then, we've addressed some of the issue. I do have to put in as well, and when we get to it, the structural components that about the containment and the rest of it. So impacts on air, this was a question that the board had. So even in when planning was doing the legislation to create this, there was a secret that was done at that time. And so odor was not raised as an issue. I did some research, and the operation of these facilities don't generate odors in general. I raised the only question here, and again, I think they've answered it, is there any toxic materials within the battery that if exposed to fire or a malfunction would release anything into the air? And I think that we're hearing no, so that's good. Impacts on plants and animals. Again, we mentioned small to moderate, but it will be minimal. Number one, it's a pitch pine scrub oak. It's got limited, a lot of it's been, it's just in the center of the property, has been lost to the pine beetle infestation. They're going to maintain some vegetation on the property. And then most of the animal species that would utilize the site will adapt to the environment there. Not to mention, again, it's adjacent to Sunrise Highway, town land, and the LIPA substation and the DPW yard. So the general pattern of development area is not an open space area, but we are maintaining trees. And then they gave the information as it relates to the pine beetle infestation. And so they noted that they're going to coordinate, they said with the town, we'll make them coordinate with the Environment Division on the proper handling when the clearing has to be done to ensure that those trees that are dead are removed from the site and that nothing was missed. And they're going to limit their clearing at December and February 28th to minimize impacts to roosting species and when a pine beetle would likely not be active. So we will add anything like that into any site plan approval for this. No impacts on agricultural resources. It's not within an ag district or any ag uses. Aesthetic resources, there were no impacts identified. Again, this one meets all the height requirements, so no structure is going to sit higher than 20 feet. The underground utilities and burial of the connection line. And again, the surrounding properties aren't residential. The residential properties that do fall further to the west, it'd be blocked by the DPW yard. So I don't see any aesthetic issues here. And they're also complying with the fence detail. They're saying it's 4 feet high. At the time of site plan, I have to just look at that a little more closely. The code requires a fence up to 6 feet high. So we'll determine if whether or not anything higher is necessary. But for the information that they gave us, I don't think it's a major issue as it relates to this.
I mean, location-wise, there really isn't residential properties
That's right.
around that were affected. So.
And the noise that they provided us doesn't show that the decibels are going to exceed the levels at the peak times that we've been operating.
How tall are these units themselves again?
How tall are the units themselves?
The enclosures.
They're about 7.2 to about 8 feet high, depending on how it sits on the ground. But I would say at most 8 feet high for for the battery. It's a container system. It looks very much like a containerized, if you look at a regular shipping container, this is a very similar height.
And to that point, they did submit a landscaping plan, so it is going to be augmented on the road to make sure, everything's properly
So you're
hidden.
not looking over a fence that,
No, the fence will be contained within the improvement area, and then there'll be landscaping along the road and wherever else.
And
needed.
by the way, we are okay with a 6-foot fence if the town prefers a 6-foot fence than a 4-foot fence. We are okay with that.
Okay, that's good. Impacts on historic and agriculture, archaeological resources. They did a phase 1A and B and didn't reveal anything. No impact on open space and recreation. The property's not located near open space. Critical environmental areas, no impacts. It's not listed, the property's not within a DEC designated critical environmental area. And no impacts on traffic. Really, there's not a lot of traffic utilizing the site at any given point, other for maintenance occasionally, and construction. But the construction activity is going to be limited, and I don't anticipate any significant impacts. Impacts on energy, again, it's highlighted. No impacts have identified, but we just wanted some information, I think, about and I raised some questions that I just was curious about. So we all know about the environmental benefits of storing the energy. It could be used when we're at peak time. It could prevent a disruption in electrical service. And generally speaking, they don't release a lot of, as you could hear, odors or any noise or anything like that. So it's a cleaner, renewable energy source. It's employment. And eliminating the use of fossil fuels in general. Then the applicant gave some information about the amount of energy that the site would use, and you could see that there's the overall use of the system, the actual what they're using for HVAC lights and such will be less than 1% of the system ability, and then. As I said, while the average use would be below 1%, the annual energy consumption for the auxiliary electrical purposes will be less than 3%. So I think that they're showing that the actual amount of energy being utilized to run the site is very, very low.
Which makes sense from a business standpoint.
100%. And just some questions that I had in my research about, and you guys have the report, right? I gave it to you earlier today. So some of this issue like about power, the amount of power supplied by a battery or the output power that a BESS can provide. This term round-trip efficiency, this is the ratio of energy delivered by a battery during discharge, the energy supplied to the battery during charge cycle, the depth of discharge, the percentage of energy discharged from a battery relative to its total capacity, and then the issue about the lifetime. How many charge and discharge cycles occur in a battery before it becomes unusable or has to be replaced?
so we're gonna fill these in?
Well, yeah, I raised these questions specifically for them to, if the applicant was, prepared to answer them.
And the lifetime, simplifying a little bit, just, I'm curious as to how many years between, how many years are they functional before you have to replace them? I don't know if you have that hard data yet, but.
Yeah, we can.
Be curious.
John, do you want to take this one? Maybe give them a little bit on the batteries.
Absolutely. Sorry, guys, I also, I have a little bit of difficulty hearing
Just,
you guys.
give us your name, please. Could you give us your name for the record?
Lifetime of the batteries related to the charge and discharge cycles. So depending on the exact operation of the batteries and some external conditions such as temperature, they're going to degrade at a rate of about 2 to 2.5% a year based on the cyclage a day that we have planned. The batteries will then be augmented as they degrade over time. By the end of the life cycle, they will not degrade entirely, so ultimately they will likely be recycled and repurposed, or we can essentially rebuild them for our own site, depending on the final determination of how long the site will last.
10 years? 5,
So the
20
project
years?
life right now is a 20-year lifespan.
20.
After that lifespan, it will have to be determined, whether we ultimately augment all the way back up again, or, if the project would get, decommissioned or handed over to another entity.
Don, just state your name for the record. Can you just state your name so we have it on the record?
Yep, my name is John O'Hara. I'm the lead project developer
Okay.
on the project.
Great. Any speakers who come forward, it's important to get your name on the record.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Can you speak to how the power is generated that's stored in the batteries?
So we don't have control over where that power is ultimately generated. These batteries are sort of plug and play in that they can take electricity from the grid from energy sources of various types. The idea ultimately is to pair these with renewable energy sources such as wind, which basically augments the ability for the wind to be able to discharge at proper times on the grid, whereas otherwise it might be at a disadvantage times on the grid, such as off-peak hours.
You're just gonna be basically pulling the electricity out of the grid wherever it came from, whether it's fossil fuels or the wind farm.
Yes, that is correct.
Can I just clarify something? You said before that the life expectancy of the batteries, I guess, augmented during this time or not, would be approximately 20 years, and then you decide whether or not you're going to fully replace it, but you sounded as though at the end of 20 years, this facility changes in some way.
So right now, we have to maintain system capacity to meet our agreement that will ultimately be signed with LIPA. So we will have to augment the facility to maintain that over the life of the project. After that time, you could simply let the project degrade at over near zero, or you could maintain system capacity depending on the ultimate business case at that point in time.
And then, when you say let it degrade to zero, does that mean it needs to be decommissioned?
We have a requirement for decommissioning plan, which
Is
they
that what
gave.
the plan is?
And we require a decommissioning fund they have to pay into for that purpose.
Okay.
And that's all clearly
But
set out
do they
in
have
the.
to come back, though? Depending on what,
That I'd have to look into, Christine.
yeah, we have to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, those
I mean,
were all
and there's no
requirements
telling.
of the code, right?
Because your approval doesn't expire.
Those were all set of requirements in the code, the decommissioning
Yeah.
and the
Yeah,
fund,
yeah.
the holding the funds for it, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be an accommodation for the fact that in 20 years, technology will hopefully be advancing at a significantly higher rate. And so, but it's a good question to plan ahead on, to say, okay,
If it's gonna
as
change.
technology changes, the consideration has to be, again, not just a pre-existing approved use.
Is this
But
something,
new technology has to be considered.
is this something that we could address in conditions of approval or something?
Yeah,
or-
I'm sure we could work out something. I could talk to council and.
Okay.
But I think we just have to keep an eye on that factor. I didn't realize that I don't know if the board did, that in 20 years this was gonna be.
I think there's also the issue of they've got a contract with LIPA.
Right, but that's their issue, that's not our
But
issue.
it is in this respect that if LIPA doesn't renew it, then they don't have a place to
Right,
sell
but
it.
This board still has to deal with the fact that they have an approval on a site that may be obsolete at that point, that needs to be addressed.
Yes.
Or they're gonna be changing in some way, and you don't wanna just let this.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it sounds like we partly addressed it. We're getting a decommissioning plan and some money for it, but then the question is the logistics of it. So that's something we'll look into. So I appreciate
I
that.
think it's also important to add that we won't necessarily be expanding the facility in any way to augment. So the entire site plan as is designed today is the maximum that it will ever be. And so anything from that point will basically be either systems that are installed within batteries that have space in them, or there will be some space left on site upon startup. And then those specific spots will be then augmented throughout the project life.
I thought augmentation was like a recharge, am I just off on that?
It's essentially, you're going to be adding new battery cells to offset some of the degradation. So you essentially oversize the project a little bit up front, accounting for that degradation. And then as you hit that sort of 100% mark, you refill back up to say 105%. Just to continue to have that and allow for reliability of the grid.
It's like our 7 years on planning board members, so we only have one going out at a time, right?
For an analogy.
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you, by the way, those are good questions. All right, so really, the lifetime thing was a big issue there. I think that summed up sort of a lot of the questions. Impact on noise, odor, and light. Again, when it comes to odors, I think they've answered the question as it relates to any of the toxic materials. The noise, the best cabinets don't produce any noise, but obviously the temperature-controlled units, the cooling units that do. But according to and Glorian raised a good question about this, was this modeling, is this based on a specific, at the time of final approval, one of the conditions will be that they have to provide the specific model and the relevant information to them. But based on the information, it looks like that the, if I got this right, the nighttime levels, let's see, the most restrictive nighttime property line standard will be less than 55 dBAs, which is the code requirement. So, and there is one also that they have to be for under 70, which they do, and I didn't put that in here, so I will put that in here as well. But I did extrapolate the information. And then, of course, construction noise, but it'll be for a limited period, and doesn't seem to be any unusual kind of trucks, that would be utilizing the site. So I think that was good. And dark sky compliant fixtures, they have a lighting plan. The lighting is very limited. It won't spill out over to the property line. It won't spill out actually beyond the improvement area. So that's good. Impact to human health, again, small to moderate impacts, and this was really pertaining to the again the contaminants that may be within this the battery units, which we got information on. And then as a result of fires. So that's where I, raised a few questions here. Because I think that the research shows that is the risk with these facilities, is the potential for fires. And the applicant gave the fire compliance that has been submitted, and that's good. But I had some questions here. Again, there's no chemicals in there that would be of concern. But with respect to fire, so obviously it was raised, you can't just throw water on these things, right? Sometimes, depending on the type of fire. And then the containment system. So if you could speak a little bit about that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'll start with the structure of the system. So they're self-contained battery modules, which are fully sealed LFP batteries. These batteries are then within a container or module. In the event of a fire, this container or module is a fireproof metal casing, which reduces the possibility of spread in between modules, in addition to further spacing between these containers, which will prevent heat transfer and thus propagation of fire further. It's also important to stress the fire prevention mechanisms that are in each of these, which include battery management systems, thermal management systems, smoke detection systems, internal fire suppression systems, auto shutdown systems, as well as 24/7 remote monitoring of the systems. So we believe that fire prevention is the best approach to dealing with pest facilities. Should a fire actually occur, though, the most important thing is to prevent loss of life, and this will be done by ensuring proper alignment with the fire department and providing all preventative measures.
What is the chemical that, sorry, go ahead.
Will there be training for the fire department? Because I think you have to handle a fire differently because of the batteries.
And
Yes,
related,
there will be training that we offer, as well as county level training that some of the counties are going through, and thus the local fire departments. So we'll have to coordinate and see their exact level of expertise, and then work with them there.
and what is the chemical that's used to suppress the, this type of fire, if one should occur?
Yes, do you want to take that there?
Sure. So the first step is the fire suppression system that we have in there. We use aerosols for the suppression, but then the primary source of basically cooling down the batteries is going to be water. So you're just going to flush it down with water and essentially flood the system with water until the energy dissipates. Because you're dealing with something that is packed with energy, so it's going to keep burning until the energy dissipates. So the way you maintain it is by flooding it with water. So aerosols is the primary use. If there is a detection for fire, that's the first thing that would be used. If a fire then starts to build up within the module, then simply the first thing you start to do is you flood the whole system with water, and you keep the water in there until the temperature drops.
And on the exterior of the system, what is the procedure for the fire department if the system is somehow breached?
Right, so it's important to, again, to stress that, we have to work with the fire department on how to deal with this, but the extent of what can be done, again, is going to be really using water on the inside to flood the system, but also on the outside to kind of.
So the fire department would use water to put out a fire at this facility?
We have standpipes, dry pipes that will be installed at every system that they would hook up. So we don't want the fire department to get close to any of the best systems. So we will just basically flood them from the inside and then also from the outside.
I'm not sure you answered the question, but we can move on to something else.
Have you had
No, I'd love to obviously try to answer your question. We flood the system using a standpipe. That's to deal with the fire internally. If there is a breach and there's fire on the outside, then the mechanism to deal with it is also using water. And the idea is to just contain the water within where the breach happens, the fire within where that breach happens, so it doesn't propagate to other systems. And that's the extent of what you can do basically with the fire there. So it's purely using water inside and outside, in addition to the aerosols that are the primary suppression system that is used.
So that's the difference between the LFP battery and, I'm sorry, what, did you say the other name of the other battery?
NMC, that's right. So,
NMC,
for
because
example, I have an electric car and it has NMC batteries in there, which are not the good type of batteries to have, but unfortunately they are the predominant type of batteries that are used. They're more volatile, so obviously you've seen early on when Tesla had their electric cars, you heard of a lot of fires, but those are slowly, gradually disappearing. And the reason for that is because they've been transitioning to using LFP batteries.
Okay.
So for our systems, we've decided from day one that we wanted to use LFP batteries.
Which, and water is the suppression system for the LFP. So now I understand, because, with the other type, if you add water, it actually makes it worse, right?
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, we'll have to get you the specifics on it, but there is a different type of lithium that is used, which is, I think, is lithium hydroxide when we were using lithium carbonate. But you get into a whole world of chemistry and chemical engineering.
Okay.
I'm a chemical engineer, and it confuses me. So to keep it general, it's lithium carbonate and then LFP, and those are in general safer than NMCs, which a lot of EV users and battery users are transitioning from to focusing on LFP batteries.
Thank you.
Have you had any experience in your facilities or know of any other facilities where they've had a fire that required you to flood the chamber and cool it down?
Yeah, there's been a couple of occasions. There was a fire from one of the Tesla facilities in Australia, I think that happened last year, and the instructions there were to purely flood the system. It was a bigger, the Tesla systems are a little bit different because they are containerized. It's one big container with all the batteries in it, and we're using the modules, which are kind of like smaller blocks, refrigerator type blocks. And so for the Tesla facility in Australia, the fire, basically the way they dealt with the fire was using water. They had to flood the system for a couple of days. until all the energy dissipates.
So that was gonna be my next question. So you have to flood the container for as long as it takes for the temperature to drop.
That's right. That's
Do they also need to then continue to, put water on the outside to keep this cool, to prevent it spreading as well, for that length of time?
Reach but yeah, to answer your question, that is probably the best thing to do, is to maintain the fire within that container, as you would then flood it from the outside as well for its, so flood it from the inside as well as use water on the outside to maintain the fire.
And I asked that question because our fire departments out here are 100% volunteers.
Yeah.
And we've, as a volunteer myself, we've been to fires for mulch fires or other things where people have to be there for, something like this would probably entail multiple agencies or multiple fire districts coming out in support if it's gonna be 2-3 days, and manpower could be a problem, So just curious,
Yeah, no, look, again, I think, and this is across all the projects that we work on, and this is, I think, how a lot of these fire departments are transitioning to think about things, is that they're focusing more on fire prevention and fire detection before it happens, because, loss of life is not something that we want to deal with, or nobody wants to really deal with it. So it's important to stress that it's really hard for you to get to have to deal with a fire because of all the preventions and layers of detections that we have in our system. And then the mechanism for how you deal with it is also the primary thing is, let's prevent any loss of life. So we 100% will have to ensure alignment with the fire department, and, providing them with all the preventative measures to deal with the fire management. So, but again, the dry pipes are installed for a reason. The flooding is done from outside of this site. Our first advice to the fire department is just, we don't want you to go on into the facility. Just stay on the outside, and then work with us within. And this is where the training will happen to figure out or to work with them on the best mechanism to deal with fires.
So you have a sprinkler system, in essence, outside each battery and inside each battery?
That's right.
Each container?
It's a dry pipe, and it's a common use, right? It's a dry pipe that is fitted inside of the container. You tap into it from the outside, and it's connected to all the batteries, and that's how the mechanism is to flood the batteries this way.
Through that, okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, and then the only other quick question, and let's try to keep it succinct in this one question, but this concept of stranded energy, if the battery becomes damaged, it still contains energy, is my reading and understanding. So if you could just speak about this concept of stranded energy, how you deal with it.
Right, so this is called thermal runaway.
Okay.
I'll let John talk a little bit more about thermal runaway, but in essence, really, this relates back to the same point that I mentioned earlier, that if there's a fire and there's still thermal runaway, then the way you deal with it is by just flooding it with water.
Gotcha.
And just letting all that energy dissipate.
Good. So and you addressed thermal energy. I saw the terminology, so I just wanted to clarify. So I appreciate that. So that's good. We got a lot of good information there. Then the other part of it is on the bottom here. This is all the special exception standards. So obviously the applicant submitted the commissioning plan, the decommissioning plan, the fire safety plan, the management plan, and that's all in there. Compliance with the special exception standards, and they obviously have all the signage and warning labels that are required under the law. Consistency with community plans, no impacts were identified. We discussed last time, this is in accordance with the new regulations that were put in, and the property location is appropriate, given next to obviously the substation, PSEG, and the DPW site to the east, town land to the south, and Sunrise Highway to the north. Consistent with the community character, again, for those reasons, this is an appropriate site for this use. So I think with some just additional cleaning up and everything, I would be comfortable recommending a negative declaration on this.
Okay.
The alarms go to your office and you would notify, or you would then deal with that issue? You'd be the primary.
That's right. It's a 24/7, remotely operated facility, so anything, there's a BMS system that will continuously monitor, and if there's anything, if deviation in temperature, changes in the way that the system needs to operate, this will be, either we trigger, again, the shutdown of the system, or if there is something that is happening beyond that and there's a fire, then we would then, communicate with the fire department on how we should deal with it.
And then, with the flooding of those containers, is there a discharge of water that then has to get recirculated in as that, is occurring?
Yeah, we've been asked this question several times, and I think I'd want maybe Elizabeth to talk a little bit about some of the containment, or, Kevin, for the matter, on how we're thinking about containing the water or the discharge from, the flooding of the systems.
Sure. This is Elizabeth Weatherby with AKRF, just for the record. Once we are in a fire, and we're working with the fire department that properly trains, it's not going to be treated much different than a fire at any other station, but we can provide some additional containment, like Gus was saying here, there's no toxic materials in the fire water that's going to be discharged. If there's concerns for off-site discharge, there's booms and so forth you can install to keep the water within your site. And that's something we can work with the fire department itself to see what materials they have in stock, what we can keep on site, and minimize any off-site discharge of that fire water.
So there's no liner needed or anything like that under the ground to contain the water?
I mean, I just think there's a lot of, it's a new technology, there's a lot of issues that, to take a good hard look at it, under secret might be a good idea to move forward, not with a negative declaration, but what does the rest of the board feel about it?
Well, I don't know that we have, this is an unlisted action, correct?
Is it?
It's an unlisted action.
So, to the extent that we have the information we need to move forward with the neg deck, we have representation of the toxicity of the materials, fire suppression protocol. This is new technology, but absent, when they prepared the regs, did they do any they did secret under the, when they adopted the battery regs for the town?
They did, with an acknowledgement that the planning board would do, there's on review of each site plan application that came in, obviously.
But under when they developed the code,
they issued a negative declaration.
They had issued, so they gathered information, so I think we're operating more or less on their secret.
Okay.
The generic secret, unless there were unique circumstances regarding this application, which I don't think there are. If it were adjacent to a large body of water.
If there was
Which it is.
Environmentally sensitive area.
Site-specific.
Site-specific, right.
Yeah, it is 700 feet from the canal, right?
700.
Do you have information on these LFP batteries? Have you received anything?
Well,
the
obviously,
assurances are nice.
Yeah, well, obviously, their submission is inclusive of the batteries that they're using, so yeah, they've submitted. Again, when I was doing my research, some of these questions came up, so just for clarification purposes. But yes, the applicant submitted all the necessary documentation. And then just to that one point is, at the time of the final application, the specific technology that they're using, they'll have to give another noise analysis. And the code requires it, actually. So to make sure that everything that was done at this point is consistent, because they don't always have the manufacturer nailed down at this point. So we will.
Yeah, and we are okay with that, and obviously because things can improve and noise can improve with time, so we are okay with providing, once the facility is constructed, to provide something on the actual operation of the facility, and that we meet both the day and night time DVA requirements.
So,
Has any any of this been referred out to outside agencies yet?
We have to do, you have to have a complete application, so that's the secret, the first part.
I mean, certainly if there's new information surfacing in our review, we
Right.
would have grounds to halt the project, undertake further
But-
environmental review.
I mean, you may get some of those concerns raised or addressed by, say, Conservation Board, you know, it's close to the.
Sure.
your-
And
or
by
maybe
the
even
way,
Fire department might raise.
that's
it.
right, and by the way, this doesn't prohibit the project changes based on recommendations or anything like that. So, to the extent that if there's some other concerns that that we were just discussing with Christine, there are probably less secret issues and more site plan issues that we could incorporate when we do any approval for this.
So I
Yeah, I
think-
mean, the main thing that and it's the last question that I asked, was like, if you're flooding out
Yeah, for
these
days, for a couple
units,
days.
right? Like, there's a large quantity of water that needs to go someplace and either get recirculated, you know, cooled and recirculated to keep flooding to take down the thermal mass, and if not, where is it gonna go? And I think that is a big consideration, and again, I'm a new member on the board, but just thinking, you know, what is the procedure then for us to really think about that? And the only tool I have in my toolbox is to take a deeper dive into SECRA. So,
Yeah, I mean,
you know, perhaps other members can discuss that.
I guess I would question what happens when there's a major house fire and there's a whole lot of water. I mean,
Which goes into the drains and the ground, right?
and heaven knows what toxic stuff is already in the house. I mean, I hear what you're
Sure, yeah,
saying,
yeah.
but
You know, in my opinion, I would say that the bigger concern for a project like this is knowing what the fire suppression is going to be in the event, what the emergency system plan. I understand what you're saying. That's a
Yeah.
scenario that could play out in almost any fire. I mean, if you have forest fires that happen like '95,
yeah.
it's going to be 10 days worth of fighting. So I'm not saying it's not an issue. It certainly is. But from the purposes of SECRA, I think, at least from my professional standpoint, I'm comfortable with the information that the applicant submitted. That as operational wise, that the project wouldn't result in flooding or anything like that, or impact the groundwater, for example.
Okay. Asked, answered, discussed, concluded. I agree.
I appreciate the question.
Thank you.
Again,
I just
based
wanted
on
to
the
take a
assurance
moment
that there
of
are no
pause.
toxic materials in that.
Sure.
yeah.
For
in
instance,
that
the
batter.
Southampton Farm Supply, the big barn with all the chemical fertilizers, toxic materials stored on that site, if there were a major fire, we'd be in a similar situation.
Yeah.
Right.
There would be water with
Bad-
chemicals
with bad stuff in it.
permeating and bad stuff.
Technically speaking.
Yeah.
And if I may interject, Vice Chair Finnerty, Member Catalinato has arrived during our
I'm
discussion.
grateful that you're here. Thanks, Greg.
Okay.
Good.
Well, that was an excellent discussion, I have to be honest, so.
Well, we're all learning.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
are. That was
Thank
good.
you
Thanks,
for
everyone.
your
So I would recommend a
education.
negative declaration.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll move forward then with the negative declaration. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Kate, second by Gloria, all in favor?
I'm gonna
Aye.
abstain
Abstain.
because I missed the bulk of the
Okay.
conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I just
So
wanted to
we
make
have
sure we knew
five
you were
yes,
here.
We have one absent, we have one abstention. Did I get that right?
Yes. I'm
Your math
keeping
is
track
right.
for you.
Oh, good. Now, I know Janice is here. Are you ready to jump in, Janice? We apologize for the delay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, panel.
Thank
This is-
you very much.
This was good that you heard us.
Yeah.
Touch, you know,
We're jumping back in our agenda to item 1, which is the public access plan for Canal Boathouse. We're very eager to be welcoming folks.
I was just
Hi,
there.
guys.
I was just at an event at the CPI.
Okay.
And I just want to hand these out. This is it, right? This is the,
Share.
oh no, this is the spa layout. There's two parts to this request, actually. This is the easement. The, I'm sorry, let me just give you those first. That's enough for everyone?
You guys sharing?
I'll give that one to Kate.
So
and
there are two
there's one
copies,
for
right?
Gloria.
There are two copies. There's two sets of plans, or?
Yes. The first request is related to the site plan. I have Guy Germano and Kristen McCabe here with me. And as you may recall,
we've always had some issues with the public access easement because it was like this springing easement that relied on us getting the MTA involved, and we were never gonna get the MTA approval. So the good news is that the town board was approached by the owner who said, you know what, we wanna turn this into part of our hotel complex of Canoe Place Inn. So the boathouses are now permitted as tourist units, villas that are associated with Canoe Place Inn.
So that
And
they're not
as part of that, they gave us a non-conditional public access easement, and they're gonna build it out so that you can go there, and if anybody recalls this, we've got the parking lot, public parking, the boardwalk out, you know, you can go out, and then you'll be able to walk along the shoreline, on the boardwalk, around the pool, what's above you is the pool, back up by the marina, and then there's this like viewing platform that is now going to be available to the public. Gorgeous, like you'll be able to see the whole view of the Shinnecock Canal. It's really cool. If you have the chance, I recommend you go check it out. And then they are giving us an easement across the hotel property now, which the boathouses are considered part of that complex. And so you can get out onto the sidewalk of North Road, which is amazing, because before we didn't have any of that.
So,
Yeah, no, not over the canal, like you're already on the east side.
yeah.
Um,
So you could go under 27 and go north, walk.
no, well, you
Is
would go
there-
across the canal on the sidewalk that's currently there, on the bridge, if you wanted to go from
Yeah,
one
well,
side to
but
the other.
north, to go
Yes.
north.
Yes, can I just,
This is all on the east side?
this is all on the east side.
Yeah.
But you can
You
go.
You get out onto North Road
Yes, that's, yeah.
and keep going to like Mashut.
Yeah, that's,
Yes.
that's,
Yeah,
that's.
yeah, oh,
what-
you're saying going under the sunrise?
Yeah.
On the road, yes.
Yes, yes.
Here's what you have here. You have a new access point for the public from North Road to a viewing platform here.
Is there parking there?
The public parking is over here, where it always was.
It's in construction right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's always a public parking area with 5 or 9 space, 5?
It's over here,
9?
it's on this side.
Yeah. So you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
walk down to the fishing platform, you know, this platform,
Which is
viewing
over here.
platform. Then you can walk on a floating dock, and all along the frontage of this, where you, if you're looking from the Maritime Park, if you're looking from
The other
the
side of the
other
canal.
side, you're
Yes.
looking at it.
See,
You
this is-
can walk along it when this is done.
This
Yeah.
is in two parts. So there's an access way here, and then onto the hotel property, we'll call it the hotel property, onto the viewing platform, and then you can walk
Along the dock.
the docks, connecting.
Yep, to here, and then you walk, what's above you, you can't see because you're below it, but above you is the pool for the complex. Connect to where this is the marina, boat basin. Walk up these stairs and there's so you can come from North Road and just go to the access
Yeah.
easement,
Yeah.
or you can walk around
That
the
links
whole
up.
thing and come to the viewing platform. And then say you did that, say you walked like this, you can then leave, like they're giving us public access on their property here to get to the sidewalk.
Then you can
Which,
take-
you know, and then you could still walk this whole boat basin to the end, but then there's nothing really on the
Right,
other
there's
side,
no
you just
connectivity.
walk back.
No, we don't connect this because that would be a dangerous little.
Yeah, that's where it slopes,
Yeah.
and that's where we've always had the issue. So, but the compromise was they're creating this platform, and you can get to the sidewalk, and then you would just come along North Road, and you would
And
be back on that canal
If
side,
you
where the
were to-
benches are.
And on the other side of North Road, on the property we own.
which is where the sewage treatment plant is.
Yeah, that, we have a trail easement there, connects to this, the Pomonok Trail.
Yeah,
Right.
This'll all,
I'm a trail person.
so you know.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so I'm explaining to you, right.
So
Wrong person.
this is great news. The town board approved it, but you had site plan easement restrictions, and I can't administratively take them away. You need to adopt a resolution to allow the covenant amendments that would change the easement. The easement is talking still about this passive springing thing, that when we get this and that, so we wanna take that off. we basically are combining two different easements into one. Kathleen is working with Guy and she has it all straightened out, but we have two recorded easements that will then become one, because we're not talking, one is talking about like if and when we get the springing thing, here's what we're
Right.
doing, and the other one is sort of like, we promise to do this
Well,
if we get it.
we-
Here, they're building it out, done,
Done.
and that's what you would
It'll
be
clean it
voting
up
for,
instead of
clean
having
it
two
up.
It'd just be
different
one
places.
easement.
One
Are there
easement, the
any
two
hours?
become one.
Specific hours of access?
I think it is dusk to dawn restriction.
Okay,
Other
and there'll be
than-
signage, or that we actually close, your maintenance people will close a gate or some
Well,
sort?
we have to, yes.
No,
There
there'll probably
is
be a
some
little sign,
gate,
like a
yeah.
small
Yeah,
little
we
mean,
sign.
don't
no-
want to have this a nighttime hangout.
No,
Yeah, the
no,
town
no,
board
nobody wants
already
that.
put in the
It-
restrictions in the code,
But we
right?
will have maintenance, in the fact that it's a kind of a 24-hour use,
Yeah,
since
and
it's
it
hospitality.
could be a little dangerous in the
Yep.
dark.
But
Yep, there
people
will be
who
security
stay,
on the other side.
say you're staying at the hotel and you wanted to go down to the thing, you
Yeah,
probably,
hotel
you could
guests
do
are
that.
different.
Yeah.
But for the public
For the
access,
public.
it's really a daytime
Yeah.
till night, till
Now-
nightfall.
Is there
I'm assuming,
walkway lighting along it, or no?
Oh.
And
And
there's
we
not
don't
on the
want
other
it.
side either,
We don't
with the
want it.
Suffolk County, park
Just ask.
pull
Yeah.
in.
But, so there's two parcels, they had to file a covenant promising to do the easement, so we need to amend that. So the resolution will be to approve that covenant amendment, and then the easement amendment to reflect the town board changes that allow this to be built.
And that would be two separate resolutions, Jen?
No, you can do it all in one.
Okay.
And then, wait, there's more. One last thing is that now that this is hospitality use, they want to add some spa hot tubs to the units outside on the decks.
No,
And
just one on the
Just
pool
one.
deck.
oh, on the
Yeah.
pool deck. I thought you meant
Just-
more.
no,
than one.
it's on
So they
the,
want to have a hot tub at the pool area, and we can't issue electrical or building permits unless it's on the site plan.
Okay.
I
Oh,
have,
that's good. I thought it was multiple.
No,
Oh, that's
one.
good.
I have a
Even better.
question. I'm assuming that there is public parking on the CPI side? Is there?
well,
if
it's
I-
a public
Yeah, for the
use.
parks.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's,
So I could
Apartments.
go and park there and walk over the bridge
Yes.
and
onto the
walk.
inside.
Well,
to
I
this.
would say you could park at the town
Yeah, the
parking
town
lot at the
Yeah.
Parks
That's-
Department.
That's true.
At the Maritime
Yeah.
Park.
Yeah.
I wouldn't park on CPI at the catering hall. Yeah, no, that's not for public parking. We don't have anything designating that as public at all. I mean, although they welcome you to come,
Check it out.
you know, and, or like,
Yeah.
you know, go there and go to
Restaurant.
the restaurant, have a drink, whatever, as a patron. So if you're not patronizing it there, you're really, you know, you should park at the public lot across the
That's
street at
open for
Newtown
use,
Road.
that's open for use now.
yeah.
Yeah, I was just there. It's gorgeous. I recommend everybody going there. It's very
Yes,
nice.
actually.
It was very nice. And
I
so,
haven't
but
been-
here you have
Haven't been
public
inside a
parking.
restaurant in 2 years.
It's great. So if you're amenable, the resolution would be to allow the covenant amendment and the easement changes in form and substance as approved by the town attorney and as compatible with all of the code changes that the town board already had a public hearing on and approved.
So we can act now, and you can
Can act
draft it
now,
up.
and
then
I'll
you-
fix that to be.
Included changing the site plan now for the hot tub?
Yeah, and allowing the hot tub. I could always do that administratively, but since we were coming here anyway, I
Yeah.
thought, what's the point? You
Let's-
should just approve it.
Home run, we
Okay.
should get it done. Do we have a motion to that effect?
Motion.
Motion by George, second by Gloria, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Thank you, Janice, and
Fantastic.
sorry for the delay.
No, I'm sorry for being late.
No,
Actually, I was
no.
over there at CPI. My favorite group at Hampton
Yep,
Bays.
we're getting there. Good.
Thank you all so much.
I think we should have an outing as the planning board. Take a walk.
Oh, you must go to that walkway.
In the hot tub.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Nice job on the affordable housing webinar yesterday.
Bye.
Very
Bye,
good.
guys. Stay well.
Yeah, except I messed it up, but I put my slides all in one thing, so I'll send them to you all so you can see
You
it.
sh- I wanted to jump in and say, I've been to both places and that they're so fabulous.
Thank you, thank you.
Right,
I'm
yeah.
like, you know.
I usually do, but I was gonna,
That's all right.
I was gonna try to jump in extension.
Oh, right,
Yes.
it was, they
You
really
did a
are,
good
so
job.
thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was good.
Thank you. I'll see you guys, I'll send you the,
No, the extension.
Okay,
I
yeah.
fixed all the slides.
Oh, I don't.
I put it all
Wait a second, maybe I do.
Oh, good, good, good.
No, because it was not in packet, but it's,
Thanks.
You don't have the printout of the resos?
Claire
I
said
forgot-
there's gonna be no
I got the
action.
printout for this
It's
one
off
with the
the agenda.
extension date.
No.
Okay. Which
Of
reso?
which,
were you
which
looking-
application?
Where
The
are
number
we?
10 was Nosky,
10.
in January something, but
That's Wisnowski?
Yeah.
10. This was a, you did a site disturbance approval for this, and the board's new policy is that the site disturbances have to be completed within 1 year, or if it's not, you will grant up to 1 6-month extension. If it's not done within 18 months, they gotta come back. That's how the resolutions have been written. This was Matt's. So in this case, for Wisnowski, they haven't done the plantings yet, so they asked for their 6-month extension, which will bring it to January something, and I don't have the resolution.
6 months?
Yeah, there was nothing in the packet.
6 months from now?
6 months, it was from like July or
Oh,
something.
okay.
It was retro, she got it in a little late.
Well, is January gonna be planting time?
No.
We got between now and January to get it done, but.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but that's exactly right. My anticipation is that they're going to,
Okay.
so I have the date in the resolution, it's correct.
Okay.
So I would just do
Okay.
an extension
Sure, the
until
extension.
the
What's
January
that?
deadline.
Six-
But
we have a motion?
we haven't seen a resolution.
That one should have been in the package.
It wasn't.
Well, it should have been, but in any case, it was just an extension.
Okay, do we have a
So,
motion?
extension to when? You don't know.
January.
It's 6 months out, it'll be January of 2023, and I'll put the specific date in there. It
We'll
is
put
in
the
there.
date specific.
Okay.
Motion.
Motion by Craig,
I'll second.
second by George, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Say, one abstention?
No.
Oh,
No.
Aye.
okay,
Sorry.
6 yes,
You have all these.
1 absent. Jeff, are you ready to go on yours? Okay, we'll keep in order then. Item 11 is Fishhawks Watch, Bridgehampton.
And I will tell you that is not Bridgehampton, that is Watermill. and
Watermill.
It's down the
Yes,
block from my house.
Rose Grove Road, okay. What do they do there, Lorraine?
Pardon?
What do they do?
It's a 5-acre lot on a flag strip in the woods,
Oh,
so I haven't,
oh, you haven't been up there, okay.
They had a
Hi,
Karen
Karen.
Pate Murphy for the owner, 282 Roses Grove Road. They have a construction driveway that they did. They're supposed to access over here.
Oh,
So,
You see it in the plan, right?
there was a neighbor that complained,
this,
and the construction is still going on.
okay.
So anyhow, this is the revegetation plan. Just as an aside, I don't know if they were joking with me, they sent it to print out, and when I went to pick it up, it was 6 feet long and 3 feet wide.
Oh.
And I'm like, could someone have called me? Because I unrolled it, and it, it was taller than me. So
Strapped
luckily,
to the
this is
roof
the
of your
smaller
car.
one. I didn't know that they could do that,
Yeah.
that they could make it that big.
That's the
So I
smaller.
do have some bigger copies if this is not
No,
big
But-
enough,
you can
but
keep it.
basically it has,
Just be careful with the microphone,
Oh, yeah.
the paper on there.
it has, oh, they also asked, which was for Jeff, how many plants, exactly, and it has the size and the name, and then I submitted
Correct.
one page that talks about exactly how many of these plants, because this just has the size and the type.
Mhm.
And it was taken off a list that's allowed for this area. It's kind of wooded, and you can see in the aerial photograph.
And-
And,
you
Yes.
said something about a construction driveway as opposed, and so are they not still supposed to be coming in off of Roses Grove Road?
well, they have a utility easement, but I guess there was a miscommunication.
Well, then
And,
how are they getting to the house?
There-
There's another access.
There's another access this way that's kind of uneven,
From Rose,
So yeah, I can speak to that.
Oh,
right? The
yeah,
original.
Correct. As per the file map, there was a notation that restricted them from using Roses Grove Road for
Yes.
vehicular access.
So what are they-
have an
what are they
easement
using,
It's a common
Deerfield?
right around here.
driveway, looks like.
Yeah, see that?
off
It
of
feeds-
Deerfield?
No, over Rose
It's
Grove.
off of Roses
Yeah, the
Grove,
existing-
But it
that's-
feeds, looks like it's feeding 2 or 3 houses.
Yeah. so
Correct.
that's the.
So this is the main access
Access.
Yeah.
point for this property.
And it was, when you look at it, it was a subdivision and they re-subdivided, so that's how we ended up with this weird, line. But again, there's clearing restrictions,
Right.
so
So it looks like they
This-
ran their utilities down to Roses Grove.
that's what they did. But
Water and
then
whatever.
they decided that they would
Do the
you know,
construction
Use
access.
make it
construction.
easier to bring
Bring the construction,
construction. So,
but then now they gotta close it up.
yeah, they're adding on to the house, so they have to get a variance. There's been some issues about elevation.
Oh.
There's a lot of issues on that end of the street.
Yeah, so
I will
that's-
tell you.
I know, Sean McDermott said that he's been there, and there's a lot of activity going on here. A lot of neighbors that are, you know,
And a
not
lot of
having each other over for
A
dinner.
a lot of developers,
not.
it's a lot of developers that are
Yes,
interested in doing things their way.
yes, you know, but anyhow, so we're trying to bring this one back on the right path.
So this plan would be revegetate when the construction and the construction access is no longer needed, is that like?
Yeah, I think that would be.
Or are they gonna start coming in the other way now?
They have another way in.
They have another way in. I think that they're, well, you know, we have to go get a variance, so.
The what?
We have to get a variance because they're
elevation.
adding on to the house and
Which
there's an
is-
issue about the pyramid.
Which is why they probably are in front of us right now.
Yes, because they are gonna have to bring more materials down. I'm just.
So they wanna keep using that?
Yes, but they did get a stop work order, so I had to submit an application and get this straightened out. But how long did you say it would be? I heard the last one, it's only good for a year?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so-
mean, I'm not in favor of doing anything right now, because I haven't seen a resolution, I haven't seen a re-veg plan, I don't really even know what they're doing.
The re-veg plan,
When?
And when? There was there was nothing in the packet.
I did submit a number of copies.
yeah, I
That's
have it
the
here.
plan.
This is just a aerial.
Okay, so that, because you should have,
Correct, so the revegetation is more limited to the utility access point off of Roses Grove Road. A majority of their disturbance is that. They're overcleared by 7.1% of their natural clearing. Most of the property itself is preserved. It's a 4.7 acre lot. I do understand the reason they needed to use this access point, but it is prohibited by the foul map to utilize this access point off of Roses Grove Road. It's a 4-page revegetation plan, so quite extensive.
Yeah, well,
I'm not sure why it wasn't attached to the.
It's not in here, I'm seeing it here, but
Correct. So I'm not sure why it wasn't attached, but their plan is adequate enough to bring the property to compliance with the clearing restrictions, but if you need more time to review the plan.
You don't
I
have
guess
to
I-
act on this today.
yeah.
But when are they proposing to do it?
Yeah, I mean, it
Right.
seems like they're,
Well, is it that they have to get this, this
They have to
plan
start-
approval so they can go back to ZB and other agencies for their permits?
well, they have to, they got a stop work order for this overclearing.
So an approval
So
from
I
this?
had
and-
to submit an application, but we've had some issues with determining the pyramid.
No, I
Because
understand.
there's an existing house there, and the architect had a heart attack in the middle of this. So things have been delayed, but we're not trying to, you know, get out of anything. But, you know, honestly, I think they're gonna use that road, so they
mean,
get, you know, for major, bring stuff down.
Wouldn't it make sounds crazy, wouldn't it make a lot of sense to, given that common driveways feeding a lot of existing houses, wouldn't it make sense for temporary construction access to use that road and then close it up
I
once
mean,
it's-
they're not, they have to do this. They're not gonna get any certificate of compliance or any of that.
yeah.
And they are being watched. This neighborhood is very active, and, you know, I had to get this in to
Mhm.
get them. And they haven't really done any construction, because we're at the point now where we need to get this pyramid, because there's an existing house there, and they're gonna add on to it. And had meetings with Marge, and then the architect has to make some changes, and unfortunately, he had a heart attack. And now we're just back at it, but then we're gonna go to the ZBA, so there's nothing really going on right now, because they're at the point where they need to get this variance. And, I mean, to replant this, I mean, it's gonna be big equipment coming through, you know, past those two houses.
That's what
Whereas
I'm
this
saying.
goes
Yeah.
straight down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're not trying, you know,
Yeah, I
we're in
mean,
the
it's just-
system, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, believe me, the neighbors are watching.
Are they
them.
looking for a re-veg plan to be adopted now and implemented after construction?
I mean, thank you,
Yeah, I mean, that's typically, unless it's just eternal work,
Well,
but that's
they're-
typically how it works.
They're gonna be cited for using it for access. In other words, the first truck that uses that, they're gonna have code enforcement down there shutting the job down again. Is my point. If it makes sense to have this as a temporary construction access, shouldn't we think about formalizing that?
You do it in your resolution.
We can do it in our resolution?
Yeah.
We wouldn't have to amend the conditions of, because there's probably a condition of this map that says
You're supposed
sole
to have
access shall
access
be.
the other way, yes.
Right.
That's correct.
Right, but you're doing it as a temporary basis.
And that would, we could roll
And
it,
it's already disturbed.
we could roll it into our
That's-
rebate.
You know, that's the
It's
thing,
already
so.
big, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
existing. Is that
Well,
what
and
it
that
is?
would prescribe
So
the
we should think
timeline that
about
they gotta
that,
wrap it
maybe.
up.
Right, they're only gonna get a year or else they're back before you.
Well,
Right.
here's my thinking on it and my worry, that if construction is ongoing and then we're at what, 7 point something in additional clearing, there are no guarantees that that is not going to increase as construction continues, right? Because as trucks come by, they kick up dirt, you know, trees and evergreens and the like don't particularly like that. So that site disturbance may be in excess of 7% when all is said and done. So it is, the sequence to me is odd.
Well, they were cited with a stop work order, so
Yeah.
essentially this road was created without any approvals.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure where they are in the construction process. You
We
might
have
be
to get a
able
variance.
So
They're not constructing
So
anything.
they're not doing anything right now.
Is it framed at all? Is it,
No, there's a whole house there, but they wanna add on, but they can't add on until they get a variance because of the pyramid. So there's nothing going on.
So the question I was asking before, which we all kind of trying to get the answer
Right.
to, is this application for revegetation in order to lift the stop work order or the violation of property right now? Is that what the whole point of this upcoming
Yes.
this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
but I think what Claire said is we could roll into our resolution the ability to use it as a temporary access road for, during construction with the revegetation.
Because it's already had trucks and, you know, they already
Yeah.
did
Yeah,
all
there's-
this
I mean,
work. They
the-
put a new tennis court in, they put a new pool. These are accessory structures that
Yeah,
I think you also have to get a variance. So all this heavy equipment has already gone down this road. Whereas, you know, a typical driveway,
Well, it
you know,
looks, if
which
they,
is like 15 feet.
Yeah.
You know, this
They-
has already been disturbed. So the existing native vegetation, there's not gonna be any more because they've already used it.
But to Craig's point, we could, project limiting fence, go
yeah,
up before.
That would work.
Yes,
Yeah.
project limit, we inspect it, make sure it's.
yeah, I mean, they have,
Yeah,
they have,
you
a
get
they have a
it.
mailbox.
So they don't expand more.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they have a
That's a great
mailbox
point.
at
You know,
282.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we hold off on this? Give people time to look at the re-veg plan.
Okay.
Give Jeff time to incorporate some of this discussion into the resolution. You know, project limiting fence, temporary, access road, and then we'll bring it back
Yes.
here.
Does the
And,
application itself need to be amended with verbiage requesting it to be a temporary?
No, we already
access?
got the stop work order
No,
removed.
I meant, if you want to add to the language of this, that it becomes it stays a temporary.
Yeah, construction,
road,
yes, I would
construction.
like that.
Yeah, with the understanding in your letter that it's temporary, it will be out before any COs are issued.
Yes.
You're gonna testify to
And
that.
the revegetation plan.
Yeah.
would-
Yes, I make that representation.
Okay.
Okay,
All right,
thank
we'll
you,
bring
Claire.
this back, Karen.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and
So it'll be to your client's
I'm gonna
benefit.
go up the road.
Okay,
Could be
like I
looking up
said,
the- no.
No, I'm gonna be driving up the road.
It's a very active neighborhood by
Well,
the chief building
I live
inspector.
down the block.
Oh, okay, good.
I pass
So you
there,
know.
I pass there every day when I go to Southampton Village.
But here's the personal copy.
Do you invite the neighbors to dinner?
Yeah, no, I don't know, I'm just, that's what I just heard when I might have heard from the chief building inspector. There's a lot of activity going on there.
There's
Yes, there's a lot of
a lot of stuff.
You're not having a lot.
So no action on number 11. Jeff, do you want us to take us to 12, Nullcrest?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Karen.
Sorry for being so stubborn, but.
Oh, you're on the ball.
The
Not
idea
being
is to
stubborn.
just keep it moving, that we're not
That's it.
ignoring
Yes.
You know, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Noel Crest Woods, Jeff?
I'm pulling it up. There we go. Okay, Noel Crest Woods. It's a lot located in APOD at 15 Mount Misery Road. This is part of actually a 60-lot subdivision in Sag Harbor. This subdivision borders the town line for East Hampton and Southampton. Subdivision itself was established in 1986 with file covenants that limited their clearing to 35%. Under 330-67A, they would be only limited to 60% allowable clearing. So they want to propose a covenant amendment that would restore essentially 14% of their clearing if the proposed 60% is approved today. Now, just to give the board some more history, there was a previous covenant amendment granted back in 2014 for Lot 24, 36 Collingswood Drive, which was a similar relief where 35% was initially covenanted, but under APOD, they were granted up to 60% allowable clearing.
Is it 50 or 60?
60.
60, okay. So this would bring it just into just bring it to conformance to the APOD,
Exactly.
right? Yeah, we have a number of these.
Yes,
Okay,
I have
we've,
another one coming down the road.
oh,
Can
yeah.
can I see a resolution and a re-veg plan, please?
I don't have a written resolution prepared, but customarily with covenant amendment, we're going to require that an approved amended covenant and restrictions submitted, or draft covenant and restrictions submitted, also the title certification, mortgage consent, and of course, those legal documents will be approved by our council. But if you'd like a written resolution to that
Isn't that what
effect.
we normally
I think so.
do?
We've been going that route.
Yeah, and we have like, once again, there's nothing in the packet except
Correct,
a
so,
picture.
so this covenant amendment would actually bring this lot into compliance.
Oh, so they're not doing any re-vegging?
For the most part, no, not on
No,
this
it's a
particular.
covenant amendment.
Covenant amendment.
Covenant, so that this would bring them into conformance without having to do any
Okay.
revegetation. I mean, I'm comfortable, we do this a lot.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I think as a matter of practice, it's a good idea for us to have the written word that we're resolving to in front of us at the time
Sure.
of making a decision. And of course, there are circumstances where it's, you know, a small action, so that's okay. But I think we're starting, it seems like a pattern for the board to be saying, we want to see the resolution.
Sure,
So
no
it's just
worries.
an advisement for staff, and that's,
That's essentially my
the
mistake.
procedure, I think, is honorable
I
Thank
generally
you,
have a
Kate.
resolution prepared.
and important.
I've noticed that some resolutions weren't prepared, so that's why I left it off. But
Yeah.
future presentations, of course, any applications or resolutions will be in the packet for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we can move forward. Do we have a motion then to amend the covenant?
Motion.
Motion by Gloria,
I'll second.
second by Kate, all in favor, aye, opposed, abstentions.
I'm abstaining.
One
It's
abs-
my next door neighbor.
Hey. Five yes, one absent, one abstention, and one absent.
So now we know where you live.
Now we know. And so does everyone else in the town of Southampton. Speaking to the mic.
I know.
Okay, so one.
So yeah, so just so we're clear, there's no resolutions on the rest of them. They're all restoration plans as well.
These are, do you have the actual plans, though, Jeff?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So we'll move on to
Number 13 Caldwell, that's off the turnpike.
100%, right off the turnpike. Here we are. Okay, also in the APOD, as part of a 17-lot subdivision in Bridgehampton. This lot was effectively cleared and overcleared by 4%, mostly ground cover. There's adequate canopy. The applicant is requesting to revegetate the 4% to bring the property itself into compliance. This strip of land here, this parcel here, is Town of Southampton open space. So they're proposing to revegetate the rear yard. They have an application before the building department as well for, what was it again? Let me see. proposed porch, garage, and gunite pool, which is what prompted their application to our department.
Okay. What are they proposing then?
The
Just
plan,
low
I'll
roof,
show you.
push,
We're proposing,
So that's the area.
they're proposing to vegetate this rear portion of it. Like I said, there's adequate canopy. They're installing proposed low bush blueberries, some ferns, with leaf lifters for ground cover to maintain the existing natural native plantings.
Sounds good. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Kate, second by George, all in favor, aye, opposed, abstentions, we have 6 yes. Brings us to Huntington Crossway, which is right next door probably, or nearby,
It is, yep, just up the street, actually.
just up the street.
Let's see, where are you? Got a lot of open things here. Here we go. Okay, so this applicant, as per our conversation, was impacted by the pandemic. They were before our department for revegetation prior to the pandemic, but just revisited this application again. They submitted a renewal along with the revegetation plan. Again, this one also does include some beautiful oak trees off the front, so definitely adequate canopy. They are proposing to revegetate the understory, low bush blueberries as well, some ferns, also some shad bushes as well to be included in this front yard. They wanted to kind of knock this out prior to the winter, probably because they do also have an application in front of the building department. They are currently at 28% overcleared, where 50% is required. Also in APOD, it's part of a 4-lot subdivision, which you could probably see through here.
Jeff, can you zoom in just a little bit?
See if
Is that
I can do
possible?
that.
There you go.
So it's mainly in the front yard.
Yeah.
Mainly the front yard, correct. The applicant says she uses this property primarily to fund her family, essentially, to support her family. They are negatively impacted by the pandemic once again, and she wanted to bring this in front of the board as soon as they could for approval.
Okay, pretty straightforward.
Well, that's a fairly large overclearing. It's huge.
28% over.
A lot of people don't realize that it's not the trees that,
Oh, yeah.
they'll wipe out the whole understory and they say, look, I'm not
100%.
overcleared, I got all these beautiful big trees, but they have a lawn,
Mhm.
chem lawn underneath.
Right.
Yeah, the property looks beautiful, honestly. Just it's not native, not natural. They completely cleared out the understory, but they definitely have some beautiful oak trees in the front. Existing oak trees for sure.
The whole idea is that the lawn needs fertilization every.
Well, it's not really lawn; it's more like moss.
It looks green all year round. So
Yeah,
trust me, I have
for
some in
sure.
mine.
Let's get the blueberries and the ferns back in. Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Craig, second by George, all in favor, aye, opposed, abstention, 6 yes. You got one more, Jeff, Old Country Manor.
Old Country
On
Manor.
the other side of the canal, and
This
Quogue.
one, yes, East Quogue. So the site plan is the revegetation plan as well. Let's see if I can rotate this actually.
Looks like there's 7%.
So this existing lot, and you pull up the survey as well, or the aerial, so you can get a better look at it. This one's part of 11-lot subdivision, also an APOD. This one is just north of Old Country Road, if you're familiar with that section of Old Country Road, and just east of Quogue Riverhead Road. They are effectively 7% overcleared, where 35% is required. Or they're limited to 35%. They have an existing U-shaped driveway that they want to close off essentially, and revegetate. They're putting some sweet ferns up here, which they've complained about the deer and the concern about revegetating and possible deer disturbance. But the sweet ferns, which are usually bitter, should keep all of this vegetation intact. The applicant also has, of course, application before the building department for a garage, which you can see proposed on this site plan. But the revegetation plan is adequate enough to bring this property into compliance. And them closing off the one side of the driveway will make a contiguous, nice, native, natural area off the front of the property.
This one could, 35%, this one wouldn't be capable of doing the covenant amendment?
They could, but they didn't request it, so.
They'd rather revegetate?
They'd rather revegetate it. And then actually, when I pull up the aerial, it's in keeping with the.
The other one we did earlier was
No, what I
just a
meant is
couple
the applicant
areas.
aware they can request.
Is it eligible? I don't think so.
35% sounds like.
60, over 60,000 square feet.
How large is this piece?
This piece is
82.
Oh, 82, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's gotta go, he's down to 30.
Yeah.
But it does, it's very similar and in keeping with the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So I didn't have an issue. They didn't have an issue with it either, so.
Mhm. Okay, do we have a motion? Motion by George,
Second.
second by Kate, all in favor? Aye, opposed, abstentions, 6 yes.
Thanks, Jeff.
So I have 3-5 Montauk, which is a ZBA referral. This is the BMW in on Montauk Highway in Watermill. Are you familiar with that?
Okay.
Yeah. So. So what the proposal is, the building right now is, includes this overhang here. They use this as a showroom, they have display underneath it. They want to enclose this as a showroom expansion of the building. So the total square footage of the building would be 25,209 on the property. So I prepared a short referral to the ZBA. I kind of made some assumptions, but if I'm wrong, just correct me. So it's a 2,165 square foot overhang that's being enclosed for the showroom space. It is asking for a variance because a property over, the building over 15,000 square feet can't be expanded without a variance. But since it is already used as display, I thought that there may not be any issues the planning board would have with the use, because it's already generating parking on the property.
Oh, it is,
so.
okay.
Yeah, so that was my thought, but if you guys have if the planning board has other opinions, I thought it was minor in nature as display is already occurring underneath the existing overhang. What I am bringing up as an issue is sometimes they park their vehicles in the fronts, and we really try hard to maintain that 50-foot setback. So maybe with our site plan, we would maybe put more vegetation in the front.
Oh, that's a good idea.
That. That's,
And would that be imposed by the ZBA, or?
They could, but you would also see this as a site plan, just a pre-submission that's gonna be submitted on this
But it
application.
would be helpful if the ZBA could provide some sort of linkage to landscaping.
Okay.
Because, their position's gonna be, oh, we'll just take the cars off and look, everything's fine.
Yeah, exactly. So, so I suggest like under 2, this would
And
be a condition of
augmented
ZBA.
landscaping in the front to preclude the display of vehicles. That's the time to impose it. And you're at their mercy.
And then ask this be a ZBA condition.
Right, and then we'll work out the, here at the site plan, we'll work out the specifics. Okay, good deal. Do we have a, is that?
Yes.
Was
Oh,
that-
yes, Do you want, I could add another sentence here, if it's on the list of action, would you like lead agency if they coordinate with
Sure.
you? So if coordinated.
Yeah,
you're-
sure.
Great, I'll add that, thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion to adopt the ZBA report?
Motion.
Motion by Craig,
Second.
second by Gloria, and all in favor? Aye, opposed,
Aye.
abstentions?
Great,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anthony's got his next.
Anthony, you gonna jump in with your north lot? Oh, okay. North lot's on for completeness?
Yeah. All right, let me just quickly do this.
Is this the Halsey property?
Yeah, there's a map up there.
Okay,
Is that the one? Yeah.
yeah.
So the board might remember, we did a pre-app on this one. Here's all this
Yeah.
preserved land up here.
Yep.
Halsey property. They're doing a conservation opportunity subdivision. So, what they did was, at, our request, they put the 4 lots adjacent to the other residential lots. Not, as Gloria pointed out, we reviewed this, not tremendous views into this property and its location. But they reduced the density by 5 lots. They're doing development right sale to the town, which is what was negotiated here, to cover basically the 5 lots that are not being built. But then the rest of the ag land will be preserved as well through a separate agricultural easement, which is pretty typical.
Question, is there public water there?
I think there is.
No, I think they were selling off the rights to the
Could
town
be.
to get the money to put
Good
the
memory,
pipe
Gloria.
under the,
Good memories, right?
Yeah,
But unfortunately, they don't have the health department yet, so we just gotta deem this one incomplete.
yeah. Well, the health department requires it now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they do. They didn't get health department approval yet, because the health department was waiting on a secret determination. I have to
Right.
give them the resolution, it's a type 2 action conservation
Yeah.
subdivision, so we'll just deem it incomplete, and, it'll probably be on.
It's incomplete?
yeah,
Incomplete.
because we
Oh.
don't have health
We don't have
department
health
approval.
department
Right.
approval.
Do we have a motion for incomplete?
Motion.
Motion by Gloria,
Second.
second by George, all in favor? Aye, opposed, abstentions? 6 yes.
Then pad construction, North Jones Road, I took this over, from Jackie or Matt.
Yeah, I remember this one was.
Yeah, it's going back a little while. It's had to go to the zoning board and health department, so, it's on, North Jones Road, and that's in Hampton Bays. 2-lot subdivision, let's see. One common driveway, second lot in the back. Per the pre-app report, that Jackie did, there's a natural buffer along the north property line and along the east property line. They gave everything, health department's been approved, ZBA's been approved. There was no opposition at either hearing, the pre-app or ZBA. So my recommendation for this one would be to deem it complete and waive the hearing with a 30-day written comment period.
Is the rear lot 30,000 square foot? Body of the lot? I can't see.
No, it's less.
Why aren't we doing how big is the overall tract?
Looks like 49 and change. Let me see. I apologize, 'cause it's 49.
49.
083. They kept this one at the 20,000 down here.
Oh, okay.
So they probably did increase the size.
Yeah,
It was
as much as
very
they could,
close.
as much as they could. Yeah. Good, good.
But I don't think we need a
Yeah.
hearing on this one.
So we're deeming complete and we're setting a hearing for?
I was gonna recommend just the.
Just a 30-day
30-day
written
written.
time. Good deal. We have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Craig,
Second.
second by George, all in favor? Aye,
Aye.
opposed, abstentions, 6 yes. Maple.
And then Maple, this was another one that was Matt's existing house. It's on Hampton Bays, Maple Avenue, within the R20 zoning district. They got their health department approval, and they came in with their final map per the planning board's previous recommendations. This one, I believe, also went to the zoning board of appeals to get some relief. But they didn't submit everything with this one. It was in paperwork, so I'm just gonna recommend deeming it
So
incomplete.
there's just some
Incomplete.
paperwork missing?
Yeah.
Do we have a motion?
Motion.
By Gloria,
Second.
second by Kate, all in favor? Aye, opposed,
Aye.
abstentions, 6 yes. And
Yeah.
is Jeff here for Fantastic?
No, but I'm just gonna do it real quick.
Okay.
It's
Item 21.
yeah, it's a 2-lot subdivision, and, I'm just gonna go to the page for you. They haven't submitted all the information that's required, so we're going to deem them incomplete.
Okay, we have motion? Motion by George,
Second.
second by Craig, all in favor, aye, opposed, abstentions, 6 yes.
And my sunrise at Spinock. This was last week's, and they were just missing their building elevations, which they have since submitted. So we are setting this for December 8th as a pre-submission.
Do we have to take an action on that, or do we?
We
complete-
do.
Completeness?
Yeah, we'll be setting the pre-submission conference.
Pre-submission for which date?
December 8th.
12/8.
12/8, okay, very good. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Gloria,
Second.
second by Craig, is that Craig?
Yeah.
All in favor, aye, opposed,
Aye.
abstentions, 6 yes. We've
And
got
23 is off the agenda.
23's off. Okay.
24 is an extension for 1 year for Star Aqua Center for the
Right.
pool.
All right for the pool.
Yes.
Very good. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Gloria,
Second.
second by George, all in favor, aye, opposed, abstentions, 6 yes, 1 absent. And we'll start in with, jump in there with Lewis Road. We have our team here.
So this is just, ended up, okay. How you feeling?
Good. Alphabetical miracle.
Come join the party.
I'm trying to help where I can. Okay. Using it mostly to Mary Anthony, so if you.
I have fresher versions. I got all the public comments in the staff report, and Anthony has it in his report too.
Okay.
So I'm gonna pass these out to you so you have them.
Is it site plan and subdivision?
Yeah.
Well, hers is a site plan.
Mine's a site plan, and then I just have the beginnings of the secret finding analysis. You saw I had started it the last time. This is a more complete, not perfectly complete, but everything has at least a start of an idea on it. So.
Did anybody print out or have the ones that we gave out previously?
I have
Okay,
mine
good.
with me,
Good,
but,
good, good.
I think that's a fresher one.
yeah, but I have lots of notes
All of them.
on mine, so I brought them with me along with my questions.
I love it. Great. I'm going to have Anthony start because at the first stage, this is a subdivision. And then on top of it, once the subdivision is finalized, a site plan will go on top of it, the golf course and any amenities for the
Share
project.
these. I just printed out a couple, because it's easier to see that map than just in one thing there.
That's nice.
Yeah. We're gonna get it into full size, they're still
Yeah.
working on it, but it was something that I could work with today.
Do we have enough? I can share one.
You wanna?
Yeah, I
I'll
gotta
share
share
one.
unfortunately.
We'll pass these down.
Printer. Give me a problem.
Here, I got one for you.
For sure.
You guys can share it too.
So, obviously, big project, lot going on. I really wanted to start off by sort of focusing the board on the first part of this. And the big concept here is that you're approving a subdivision map that's going to have a number of lots, single-family residences, open space parcels, HOA parcels with various improvements to accommodate the operation of the facility, sewage treatment plant, the affordable housing units, and so forth. But at the end of the day, the subdivision approval is going to approve lots. They're going to approve zoning that's going to apply to each lot. But the the subdivision map itself doesn't approve specific structures or anything like that. It creates lots. So the map that gets filed are going to show what the lots are and any of the conditions, restrictions that would be applied to each. So I just wanted to, say that so we could just understand what my role is here right now. I prepared at that drawing that you're seeing is try to just get rid of a lot of the noise and just sort of show, okay, we have lots that are being laid out. The green shows open space and areas that are being preserved through clearing restrictions or otherwise. And then you can see the lot layout. So that's why we got that prepared. So we prepared a report for everybody.
May I interrupt for
Sure,
1 second?
sure.
So this is assuming that all the individual parcels that now have separate owners they're all, now it's all one So we're, because right now we have a whole bunch of lots. Then we have to go to a big lot, and then we have to go to little lots within the big lot.
Yeah, I mean,
From a
whatever
layperson
pre-existing lot
standpoint.
lines that you see there associated before the project happens, which we've done before, we've looked at multiple parcels on subdivision, but look at them as a whole. So, yeah, I mean, right now you're looking at basically a clean slate, that this is the subdivision layout, regardless of what
Are
the
you talking about
permit.
abandonments or the
Well,
TDRs
merging.
or anything like
Merging.
that,
No,
the
I mean,
outside lots? You're
No,
Merging
just,
lots.
just.
Merging lots, yeah.
But,
The underlying
but
lots, right? Yeah.
the underlying lots, but then,
It's all considered merged when it's all in this.
right.
Yes.
But there were a lot of, I believe, unimproved potential roads within those lots.
So,
So how do they fit within the overall bigger
Okay.
picture?
two things. Number one, some of those out parcels that are within or adjacent to where the golf course is, Spinney Road area, of course. We requested and they provided the information. And we are eventually going to get to all these little issues, but they had to demonstrate that access to those lots were not being eliminated or compromised. So any property that's not within Discovery Land's ownership, they are the separate lots, have road frontage and will have road frontage to
But the
provide access to those
Discovery
lots.
Land properties that would have potential road frontage because they were considered buildable lots. What happens to that road frontage in terms of the overall development of the multiple parcels?
Well, there's road abandonments coming from the northern piece there. And they're doing that to acquire, the lands to create parcels. All that's ultimately going to be dedicated to the town of Southampton. But there are road abandonments associated with, and I keep forgetting Parlato North and all that
Yeah.
stuff, but the north property, they're gonna have to provide all the documentation as pertains to the road abandonments. It is in the report, the necessary mapping, legal documents, extinguishments, whatever needs to be done. That area also has a number of out parcels that were not under the Discovery Land. And those two will also have road access. So any abandonments that are happening or necessary for this project don't affect any non-Discovery Land parcel. So, the out parcels will still have access, and then any road abandonments that are occurring. But my understanding is that the road abandonments, and I may need to be corrected, were mostly happening on the northerly property there. But Wayne's gonna, do you want to correct me?
I can clarify for you. So, good afternoon, Wayne Berwin for the record. On what you see on the map there is what we call the Hills South parcel. And as you know, we have a parcel to the north of the Sunrise Highway on the Hills property. And then we also have what we call the Parlato properties, which are primarily, there's 120 some separate parcels, most of which are old file map lots. And there are 150 acre described parcel and another 10 acre described parcel over on the Parlato area. But as Anthony indicated, there is a filed map that runs through the center of our holdings here. We happen to own about 95% or more of that old file map. And
Excuse me,
as
is that
per
what
the code,
Is that what's shown in pink or orange or whatever? Is that the old file map?
what's shown in orange is the parcels, there's 9 parcels that we don't own that are in that map. But that map, if you were to look at it, runs from the south all the way to the Sunrise Highway. And it's only those areas in orange are parcels. And for most of those, they're owned by the county. They took them as tax sale and perhaps are now in nature preserve. So, but there are some in private ownership, and we've tried to acquire them for the last 20 years. And the problem with those is there's title problems. They were deeded to families 50 years ago, and people don't know what interests they have or otherwise. But nonetheless, as Anthony did describe, in this particular map, all of those lots in Smith Avenue that provides them access they will continue to have paper access. And that's all they have now. Under your old file map regulations, not any one of them are developable. They wouldn't be able to be opened as a development parcel. Similarly, on the Parlato properties, as this board has already done on a couple occasions, you've allowed abandonment of lots and streets, and that's what we propose to do there. And once that is done, all of that land is gonna be deeded to the town. But we're,
But doesn't
just
the
so
ta-
you know, is the
Doesn't the
state
town already
law-
have them?
Excuse me?
If they were identified as potential roads, doesn't that mean that the town already owns those?
No,
No, we don't have an official map here where we own the roads. We
Okay.
don't have that in this
no,
town.
just because a road is on a map, it isn't.
Yeah, we
it's-
don't automatically
may-
own it.
May be considered offered for dedication, but until the town board actually adopts a resolution and accepts it into the highway system, it remains a privately owned road. In fact, all those old file maps, their deeds to them, every abutting lot owner owns to the center line, subject to the rights of the people on the map to use it for access. But they are unopened. And so we will do an abandonment. And the reason for the abandonment is that under state law, you can't file a subdivision map on top of another map. So we have to abandon the underlying maps to allow us to file our map. And that is something that we did provide you with. The abandonment maps are part of the submission. We didn't have the complete survey of the Smith Avenue, and we're gonna submit that next week, so you have that, but that is something that we expect. The staff asked us to try to do this 3 or 4 months ago, but the timing to get the surveyors, to get all these surveys with each lot, like I said, there's 120 of them over there, and each one of the out parcels, we had to remain to have paper access to the street so that they could say they have legal access. And that's what the abandonment laws require, so I hope that clarifies.
And this orange, pink, whatever you would call it, are actually pieces of land that you don't own. But
Correct.
so someone, if they can prove they own it, could build a house there because you provided them with access?
In theory, if they comply to your old file map regulations, because they are old file maps.
Okay.
And the problem with them is your regulations say you have to have 30,000 square feet in the CR 200 to be even considered a
Yeah.
development parcel. And the other thing is, regardless, you have to determine whether you're gonna open this map for development.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that none of those, and the purpose is, if you did open the map, would be that's a receiving site for development rights, which you ordinarily wouldn't do in the CR 200 zone. 2 is the length of where these lots are, the utilities that you would have to install to extend to get there
Would be prohibitively expensive.
So,
Yeah, I just want to understand.
And when the abandonments of the Papist roads and rededication to the town eventually for the Parlato properties. I mean, part of the strategy there too is also that those become part of the open space calculations after they're abandoned?
absolutely, absolutely. Everything that, after the abandonment, anything that we have over there is all going to the town.
But as part of your maintaining your open
Yes.
space dedication to the town to meet the requirements of the,
That was always calculated
Right.
from the pre-app stage, actually from town board stage, so.
Thank you.
No, appreciate it. So then, looking at a subdivision map, so we process an application like we would any other, right? So, in this report.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Only because it's shown on this map,
Okay.
your gulf, is the green,
Distance from the houses, is that what your question
No,
is?
the
or-
holes, that's not part of the subdivision, it's just shown on this plan.
It has a lot.
It has a lot
There's
associated
lots.
with
Okay,
it.
that's- okay.
So absolutely, every component will have a separate lot there, and they did outline it in their maps and
Okay, no,
label
thank
them,
you.
but yeah.
I didn't think it.
So on this report, I spent the first part of it giving an excruciating detail process, how we got to this point. It's so far that it basically ends with, on the bottom page 4, and here we are. So, that's, and I don't think we need to go through it, but it does go through the entirety of the process from the beginnings, through the town board process, through the planning board's pre-application, preliminary process, the seek review, the adoption of the findings, and then the subsequent preliminary approval, and then the submission of the final application. So all the details are in there. It's really just that, so you have a very clear description of how we got to this point. Like every other subdivision, we have public comments, and they have been added to my, they will be added to my report.
They're in my report.
Claire does have them.
So.
So that's because part of the record, obviously, we have a lot of comments, and Claire went through them painstakingly, and they've been incorporated, so that's part of the report as well. I think everybody heard everyone's comments, and there was a lot of, support and a lot of opposition as well, and all that's documented. Also, part of the completion of the subdivision review process was the referrals that we made to the various agencies, and they've been included in this report. And you can see the town engineer did a very thorough review, page by page, and provided comments, which I know the applicant is working on, which Claire and I are continuously reviewing and working on. Everything's still in motion. We got comments from the Conservation Board with various comments, very similar to what they provided before. Their biggest concern is the enormity of the project and their recommendation for a phasing plan. They gave their comments about a phasing plan. We've talked about it, so how that phasing plan is being developed, will be presented to the planning board, but they did recommend it in there. So, and incidentally, we think that's a really good idea. They also recommended in there as a point to have some type of on-site engineering monitoring of the project as it goes forward. And that we've had discussions about with, too, and that's going to be part of any approval for a project or any resolution with conditions about that, so.
Anthony, one more question.
Yeah.
When you say phasing, which makes total sense, but don't we have to look at the overall benefits, the environmental benefits as a whole, not in segments? Because that.
No, they just mean phasing in terms of how to construct it.
Okay.
So typically, as you know, with a subdivision, the first thing you're gonna do is the roads, right? Or the infrastructure, you're gonna put the utility lines in, they'll probably phase the roads. They gave us phasing plans that I don't think make sense, and I think they should reconsider how they wrote those plans, but.
I guess I was,
Yeah.
I assumed when they were showing those modules, that they wanted us to look at those modules independent of the others.
No, we're just saying like, so when you go to, and I think this is like sort of what Conservation Board comments are about, and also we talk a lot about this at the Pine Barrens, just in terms of, it is a big project, and just staying on point with, like, you don't wanna just be,
Everywhere.
a disaster, or we don't want environmental, they've cleared it all, and, no, we wanna be like, let's be very specific about what we're clearing, cordon it off, say this is what we're clearing, we go check it, we have our independent field verification, and then we say, good, and then they move on. So, as you know, with all the phasing plans that Claire has done in site plans, you did this for Gabreski, you've done this for many, many projects, where you, even CPI, which I just
Yes,
gave.
yeah.
So you said, okay, these are the improvements that are gonna be phase one, this is now, and then this is what's tied to it. So we know that phase one is done when you've done X, Y, and Z, and then we move on to the next phase. So that we're all following along in lockstep with what's happening, and it's not all willy-nilly, like, these people are working over there, and we're over here, and we don't want that. We just wanna be like, right on with what's going on, and then they are going to have to manage that in terms of the bat habitat and all that.
Janice, I don't know whether you and me, I circulated an email a few days ago suggesting this project may warrant an on-site engineer.
I do agree with that very
answerable
much.
to the
Yeah.
town. The engineering review fee was probably gonna be substantial. And this way, I'm envisioning a site field engineer, which is, even George agrees, is common with large municipal projects. The workflow would be actually funneled through their office. They would generate monthly progress reports to the department. Occasionally, there might be items that may need some minor modification. At that point, staff would bring it into our board so we could do the modifications. But that way, the department and the engineering would be overwhelmed, because it is a large project.
I agree. The more help we have to make sure, I think half it, it's gonna move forward, and this is being done, then the biggest thing is, the best thing is to monitor everything that's being done.
Right.
Because we've all handled the calls of like, oh my God, there's, you know, a chainsaw out there. And instead we could be like, no, we have someone out there, they're monitoring everything, we've got the fencing up, we've checked it. You know, we wanna make sure this is all going very smoothly,
And
so
these,
I agree.
these engineering firms, they have multiple disciplines on staff, so when you need the arborist, they come out, when you need the hydrologist, they come out, when you need, you know, whatever, it's the civil engineer, they pull in the various disciplines from their firm to, and we should, you know, if the department, I didn't wanna, you know, force it, but it should be.
No, I agree, and I think that, you know, you had very good, track record with doing this, even in my theme today is CPI, but you had Robert Strata, making
Right.
sure they did everything right, he kept coming back and reporting to
Yep.
you, so we do like
Done
that
before. Even
structure.
when I was here, we use an independent firm to monitor when we did Stop and Shop and McDonald's.
Yeah,
Right,
remember
that's
that?
right, that's
That's
right.
right, that was my
Yeah.
project too. Yeah, so I think that, that's a great idea.
And who
So,
pays
but I
for-
don't know who, the review fees, I don't wanna speak to
Yeah.
that all of the engineering review fees go to this, we just need to get a quote, we need to know what we're talking
Yeah,
about, I
that
don't
was-
know
that
how
was
much the
gonna be
review
my-
fees
my
are.
question.
None of this will be paid for by public dollars, they have
No.
to be paid
Okay,
for
I
by,
I
the
remember
review
Stop and
fees
Shop
or
being
privately.
paid for by the developer.
Yeah, absolutely, so we just need to nail that down, but I agree.
But at the same time, you
concept.
don't wanna, I mean, they're paying engineering review fee, those fees should be targeted.
Sure, but look at all the
Sure.
review it's been countless hours also in
Oh, yeah.
review by the town engineer, so I don't wanna speak to all the fees
Yeah.
going to
So
this.
there are two fees that engineers charging, and it's still being done this way. There's a review fee for what you're doing now. When you start construction, there's an inspection fee. Now, the inspection fee was based by number of visits, typical for a site plan, maybe 3 or 4, or subdivision, but something of the scale, I mean, there is no, it'd be hard to calculate a fee. So that's why I remember Stop and Shop, the applicant paid for that.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 'cause-
In lieu of inspection fees. I stopped by every so often to monitor what was going on, but.
So
again,
we'll
this
get
is-
together with Tom Houghton, our town engineer, and figure out what works and,
Because he's still gonna have to oversee
He's still, yeah.
the,
still
the,
will.
the,
Still go through the
an
engineering
outside
department.
company, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that will be a great thing for everyone.
Wayne, did
Wayne wants
you
to-
chopping at the bit there?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we're all in favor of having the town do that. We understand the magnitude of the project and the fact that the staff and engineers are probably not going to have the wherewithal or the manpower to do that, so we welcome that. And we do recognize, as the chairman just did, is that there is gonna be substantial fees. The, 7.5% of the bond estimate here is gonna be, substantial, and we are paying you that.
Right.
So it isn't coming out of anybody else's pocket, it's coming out of our pocket, so to use those fees wisely, I think would be appropriate, so. We're in favor of that, and I would suggest, maybe it takes a while to get somebody on board, that we start looking now.
Yeah.
Great.
Oh, we have a meeting with, town engineer on Monday.
Yeah, but I'm just saying is if you have to go out
To
and
bid, yes,
do an
yes.
RFP or something like
Right.
that, it would, we know how long those take, so
Sure.
the sooner the better.
Does the planning staff vet the firm that we would use, or would it come before our board as well?
I would defer to Tom.
Town engineer would vet it. He's gonna get like 3 competitive quotes, he's gonna know the firm, he's gonna feel comfortable with who he's working for, that they're in our best interest, there's no conflict of interest. So
Yeah.
I would go with whoever he chooses, honestly, the board, right?
Yeah.
And then,
But I like your idea of the arborist, the
yeah, like a
person checking the
multi,
clear-
They have
purpose type of
multi-disciplines
firm.
to come in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We just need to figure out, usually you do have a resolution for us to, but we're already collecting the fees. I gotta figure that out a little bit with how we.
And
Yeah.
if something
do
does
that.
go amiss, the on-site engineer would pull the kill switch,
Yeah,
and,
that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely good idea. Thank you,
Great.
Dennis.
let's keep it rolling.
And so we got Pine Barrens comments, and incidentally, Claire and I are going through, because we got a lot of comments, obviously, each one of the recommendations, whatever needs to be included as a condition, as a covenant, will be outlined in a future report. So I just want you to know, we're not just throwing their comments in there and saying they provided it. We are reviewing them. And for example, the Pine Barrens gives a lot of comments. A lot of it's some mapping questions, clarification, and they're all legitimate, and they're gonna be included, in the future
And currently,
reports.
the applicant, and I can say this because I'm, sitting as a designated representative on the Pine Barren Commission, the commission just allowed a letter to go out to the applicant asking all these additional questions, so they want to be sure that they can say the changes. We don't want to just play agency football, right? We want to be able to say, the final map is the final map. Like, we're not gonna say conditioned on you going back to the planning board, Pine Barrens, we want the Pine Barrens to be like, yes, it's good, and then go from there. So Pine Barrens just wants to assure themselves it is just as good and it meets all the standards and guidelines. And so that's where we are right now. We've
I like how you
asked.
put that too, agency football, because sometimes it sort of feels that way, right?
It does,
Yeah.
and we try to minimize that as much as we,
Yeah.
sometimes it's inevitable, but as you know, the Pine Barrens changed the map significantly. Now you're looking at the difference, and we referred it to them, and changes have been made since they last saw it. So we just wanna make sure they're good,
Yeah.
and then that way, there's no more of that.
Knowing that they're good helps us be good as well,
Exactly.
yeah, so everything
Yeah, I
falls
mean,
in.
couple of comments. First, we had that SECRA training last week.
Good.
And it raised a question in my mind about, well, if there was so much change from the Pine Barrens Commission, do we have to have a supplemental EIS? Or we had a whole lot of questions that I'm not sure were answered at the last time the planning board saw everything. We said that could be handled by site plan.
Sure.
Have all those questions been answered? And secondarily, all the questions that are now going to be raised, that have been raised by the Pine Barrens Commission, can we manage that through a site plan application? Or do we really have to stop and say, do we really need a supplemental?
So it's my
Jen,
understanding
before-
that
Before you answer, because you've got like a couple of layers there.
Yeah.
As far as the planning stuff, certainly you can answer, but in terms of the procedure for SECRA, although we've discussed this already, if you would like to discuss that aspect of it further, then I would suggest that you set up an executive session for the board and we can
Okay.
discuss that legal issue.
Yeah,
But as
because
far as the other
I
stuff-
don't know the threshold, and that's where I'm.
But just as a basic, just real basic thing on SECRA is that, in my experience, and Claire and Anthony can also attest to this, supplementals are really reserved for when something rises to the level of environmental impact, and then you need to do a supplemental around that issue. So if there was something here that was different enough and so egregious enough that we would be like, wait, it's new information. Like, we didn't know they were powering the houses with nuclear power, And so now we have to look at this, like, nuclear power that's going on. That's so different than anything we've talked about. Then that would be a supplemental environmental review around that
When you
thing.
I would
And here
yeah.
you don't have anything that rises to that level, because all you have is amended findings to make sure that the changes in the map are consistent with what you've already found.
I would
Right, does that
characterize
make
the
sense?
Pine
Mhm.
Barrens action as not so much changes as refinements.
It
They
is.
took the essence of what they reviewed is essentially there. It's gonna be an 18-hole golf course, there's gonna be X number of residential units, holes removed, sewage treatment, but those were more refinements of what was initially brought to them, and there may be further refinements.
Right, but the gist is that they made it more environmentally protective of the steep slopes in trying to meet their standards and guidelines.
They didn't identify any new aspects of this map that wasn't previously reviewed.
Right, so that's where the supplemental comes in, so the way to handle it is to, and that's what Claire's been laying out here, is your findings analysis goes through like, is this the same? The finding still stands. Is this the same? The finding still stands. How is this finding different? And you may say, well, we looked at X, Y, and Z, and we find this, it's compatible, consistent, or it isn't, and if it wasn't, then you would have to then sort of target in as to what the impacts are. And if they're not rising to the level of a significant impact, then you don't need a supplemental impact statement.
And
That would be the
just
best
to
way I
can
can
I just
explain.
add one thing
Yeah,
also,
please.
and that the secret review process, we went into this a lot at the preliminary. The secret law specifically talks about this issue of supplementals and acknowledges that agencies are going to require changes to the map, and changes to the map are going to happen throughout the course of the project, and changes in and of themselves don't necessarily require a supplemental. So secret does acknowledge that a map is gonna change
Right, the fluid
inevitably.
process.
Yeah.
Wayne, did you, I know.
I was, when you first raised the question, and if it was necessary to outline what the statute says, but I think staff did it adequately, so.
Stole your thunder.
We appreciate that. Thanks for scraping that compliment together.
Okay, keep us rolling there, Anthony.
So then,
Oh, I'm
if
sorry.
I see, I have questions about some of the changes, then that's part of the overall analysis without doing a supplemental.
Correct. Yes. And it's best to, that's why we're giving you these reports and this information early on, so we're not at action deadline and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't think about this.
Yeah, I mean,
If you
I-
see something, now is the time
Yeah.
to say, hey, they didn't, something was missed, but I think they've gone over this with like a fine tooth comb. I'm not sure anything has been unlooked.
It's all there, we have to now,
Now we have to get into
We
the
gotta-
big
Trying
issues.
to, like,
Pull it
and-
together
and-
and
Yeah.
understand it.
Yeah, I mean, just off the top of my head, the STPS was moved. I
Yes.
want to understand what the implications are environmentally. The affordable housing has been moved. I want to understand where that is in relation to.
It hasn't been moved.
It's
been in the same spot since the prelim.
But everything else.
The STP came to be two parcels over from it. That's
Yeah.
what happened.
And the Pine Barrens did that because of two reasons. One was the well field, they didn't want it over there, and the other one was in the steep slopes. They were like, now you have to drill even deeper.
Yeah.
And they wanted it all sort of brought closer down.
And I think further in this report, because we reviewed it already, Claire does address that, and there are several things in there that you'll see. I think if you go through the report, it'll probably answer the
Yeah,
questions
I
that
mean,
you have lingering.
I've
and-
gone through it once a lot.
It needs more language, though,
Yeah.
no doubt.
Yeah,
No, that's good about the steep slopes. I have to add that in there, I think.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest reasons they moved it, was further down, because they
Yeah.
didn't want it in the
And-
steep
and
slopes.
what-
It didn't
what-
make any sense to be there.
Well, we're sort of discussing process. I mean, we're sitting here now, spending some time discussing, should we be sending stuff to Claire and Anthony with our own questions?
100%.
Yeah.
We copy the board.
Anytime.
Yeah.
We copy the board. so
Yeah,
we
because we have a report now that we're all building on,
Okay.
so definitely.
Because I think that would, I know, I've got, 3 pages of stuff that I've already
And
identified.
then your findings, if they need to be modified, you now have a reasoned elaboration for whatever modifications or whatever you think or whatever has to happen. That's what the findings are all about.
Yeah, because my goal is to try to make this as environmentally good as we could possibly do.
Yeah, everybody's
definitely.
great.
And that's really was the Pine Barrens as well, even though some people weren't happy with the STP moving south, in terms of the environmental impacts, it was better. And they are the water authority, so they're the
Yeah.
ones that get to say that. So.
We got comments also from the housing director, the new housing
Now
director.
you're here, so you can really explain this.
Oh, good.
That's
what I wanted.
Who was not here when we did the initial preliminary, where we established where the number of units and where they were going to be located.
Anthony, can you say what page you're on now?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. I'm on the correct page.
Okay.
19.
I have 17, okay.
Page 13.
It starts on 13, it goes to page 18.
It's on 17 in the staff report. So,
Right, yeah,
and
I'm
then-
looking
so
at
the-
17.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm not using yours.
No,
I'm using
you're
mine.
using yours, perfectly.
But the housing director, and then Janice subsequently responded to that because, like I said, it was a different housing director at the time that reviewed this with us, where we got our recommendations and subsequently, our preliminary approval. And then Janice gave us an excellent memo outlining all the code requirements, and it was very detailed, and that she was comfortable with the units as were previously considered.
Well,
by
as
the
you
planning
heard
board.
yesterday on our affordable housing roundtable, sort of like, the big thing was that people just, just pay to get out of it. But then, like, all we're left with is no
Yeah.
affordable housing. Like, if
Right.
you don't put people's feet to the fire and make them build it,
Yeah.
which was what you originally said, they want
That's
to.
right.
No offense, like, they would be more than happy to just give you money and have nothing.
Oh, yeah.
But you want it built.
I personally
Right?
would prefer it not to be between, adjacent to mechanical.
But I think you really
maintenance
need to look at the site plan and
And
the
I-
elevations.
And I want to see
and-
what it's going to look, what it
Yeah.
looks like. I mean, those are my concerns. It's like, it's being
it's important to have a visual, and I think that embedding like elevations or pictures in the report is worth a million words.
You know,
Because when you see it and you realize they're insulated, they're not, it's not like they're, like someone's like pouring, you know, chemicals right next to someone's house. Like, it's just so not like that, so I think you need to see it.
And the same way the STP is much closer to the houses on Spinney Road, I want to understand.
Right.
So maybe from a water perspective, it's okay, which I think is somewhat addressed in some of the stuff you wrote. But what does that mean? What are the neighbors on Spinney Road, what are they looking at? What are they going to see? What are-
Although, of course.
Immediately adjacent to,
No,
there's a piece of
yeah.
property.
Because that's
between-
Well, that's, because
It's a
I,
big buffer, and also like, remember, they didn't have to do an STP, you guys wanted them to do the STP, right?
Yes.
You specifically wanted it for the groundwater purposes,
If I
so
may,
like.
Gloria,
yeah.
and also if you look at the site plan, you know, you have
So, yeah.
Spinney Road on the east, and all the houses on Spinney Road are to the east of Spinney Road. And immediately between Spinney Road and where this STP is the cemetery.
okay.
So you have a cemetery, so when you ask what are the people on Spinney Road looking at, they're looking at the cemetery, and they will continue to look at the cemetery.
And, you know, it's green.
Right.
I
I think
I grew up
it's-
across the street from a cemetery, so.
Right, so my point is that, you know,
Well, that's
we
what I-
heard comments that people were concerned that the
Yeah.
sewage treatment plant is in their backyard kind of thing, but I
Well,
think when you look at it, we gotta,
The visuals would be helpful.
Yeah.
Think of the canal housing where the STP was literally these people's backyard on, up the canal condos, remember?
Sure,
Remember that public hearing?
I
do.
sure do. We are having an argument right now in Hampton Bays about the cemetery and the
Oh, yeah,
STP
yeah.
right by it and whatever, but the idea is that here you have a big buffer, and it's underground, and it's contained, you know, in
Yeah, I mean,
a
I've
building.
seen the STPs elsewhere, so I mean, I know that
Be
they're
good
not.
to see the distance from the SCP to other places.
And that's what you would do in your findings. You
Yeah,
would
they-
say, this is okay because X,
Mhm.
Y, Z. And if it's not okay, then you need to say, well, how do we make it okay? Well, we need another
Mhm.
buffer, we need a fence, we need to know what their odor control thing is. Like, we just wanna make, that's what you're doing when you're amending your findings.
So the STP, nobody's property line abuts it?
Right.
No,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. And
Not even dead people.
how dare
I told you,
So-
cemetery was my playground. There were grass and trees.
you? So, approximately from, you know, how many feet do you think?
From the cemetery?
Yeah, from the nearest backyard to the STP.
Look at the plans
Pardon me?
here. The house that came in handy.
east side
Right.
is Spinney, so their side yard.
So the plans,
Oh, so- okay, fine.
So it goes house,
Better
street,
on the other one.
cemetery,
Cemetery.
STP.
Right.
So that's
Over
why
100
you're not.
I don't think it shows adjacent properties on it.
it's bigger than that. What is the thing?
Bigger?
Yeah, I don't think it shows
have
adjacent
a-
properties on it.
But you can see just here, this is the sewage treatment plant. And then this is the cemetery property, and then there's a road, Spinney, and then the houses.
Okay.
While we're talking about the STP, could you confirm, I believe it's true, but could you confirm that the grosser dispersion analysis was done of the STP site at its new location, not its original location?
Okay.
You know, it looked like the end of 2020, I think, was when it was moved to the new location. The grocer report, I think, is dated July of 2021, so leads me to believe that, and looking at the maps, it looks to me like it was done at the new site, but I don't really see it ever explicitly stated.
This is, you're talking about a dispersion of the tertiary treated effluent? What are
It
you
was the
saying as far
nitrogen-
as dispersion of
Of
effluent?
everything.
But
Right,
but
this
it's
is-
already tertiary treated, right?
But
Okay.
that was the.
So
right.
how much nitrogen content even is there to disperse?
Well, I mean, I don't want to get back into the report, it's highly technical, and I'm
Yeah.
certainly not a technical
okay.
person.
Oh, well, let's
have-
But
let's have the
just that it
applicant
was
deal
done
with it,
on
yeah.
the new location and not on the old location.
So you want to understand how any resulting nitrogen from the effluent disperses out into the groundwater in this location now?
Yeah, I think if you look at the, what I pulled out from the grocer report, I just want to make sure that's the new location.
That's still relevant.
I think,
Right.
Okay.
I think it is showing that.
I think it is when I
Yeah.
look at the maps, but
Well, let's
be
have
great
the
to confirm
experts you know,
Okay,
address
so
it.
they'll address that.
Yeah, absolutely, we'll confirm.
Okay, great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Questions? Keep that.
That's a
Thank
good
you.
question.
Don't put a note.
And that will be in your findings.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether this, where I noted this, but there is a fertigation analysis of the overall property. And that there was a comment that with the holes moving, that analysis needs to be redone to see if in fact the overall numbers still make sense. Because it has to be each hole, but then all holes together. And I may not be.
So these are lined and then they're taking the.
They're using the nitrogen-laden water.
Right, to
To use
irrigate.
as fertilizer for the
So we have
greens.
Marty Petrovic, well, that's our guy that,
Yeah.
like, although he was also
Top of
working
the
with
bridge.
them at some point,
Yeah.
but really, we use him with everything, but we could use Tom Cambreri as well, right?
Yeah, so should we get an estimate from him at this point to have, I mean, this is really tight with timeframes.
Yeah.
But, well, let's have him address the fertigation
yes.
to see if there's been any changes to that, right?
Because the holes are moved.
Yeah,
So
the holes have
therefore-
moved,
So
definitely.
therefore, one would assume that the fertigation analysis should be looked at to see.
But when you move the holes, wherever you put them, they're gonna be lined, and you're still just recirculating that water wherever it is, right? I'm sorry, I'm not
It's
Smaller,
understanding.
right? The hole's smaller.
Am I not understanding?
The size of the golf course did get
It's
slightly
not smaller.
smaller.
She just wants a rerun of the fertigation numbers again with the size
From
and where
the
the holes are
lined
now.
greens.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So you're taking the water from the lime greens and putting it on the holes, whatever you call that, the green, and you're saying redo isn't it, I can't understand like why it would be different, right? Am I saying that wrong?
It would only,
You're
the
the
size of the
It would only be
the
less.
greens
right?
were
Yeah.
increased.
Or
They
the
would-
amount of
They can
fertilizer
respond
or
to
something
that,
like that,
though.
which it
Just-
hasn't.
That's what
Okay.
she wants to see, so.
But
Just-
we're also
just-
reusing the, whatever nitrogen is in the green in lieu of, to reduce the fertilizer in the
Right.
greens
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
right? So,
So you just want those numbers to say,
Just look at the numbers. It was an analysis done showing that they're improving the groundwater because they're using this fertigation analysis.
okay.
And so
Ask if it's changed. Ask if it's changed based on the reduction in size of the golf course.
and where the holes now are.
Right. You understand, does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
Sure, I just don't.
I may not be
just-
articulating
Yeah.
what I'm trying to
She
say.
want-
Let me go back
wants
to
the
my
numbers
notes as
rerun
well.
in terms of, does the same conclusion, do these numbers still stack up as to where the new location of the holes are as they're smaller and the golf course as a whole? The liners, it's a smaller area. Do the numbers still stack up is what she's asking.
Sure, okay.
That's it, that's it. Yeah,
That's
it's
fine.
not a-
I'm just trying to understand it for my own self.
Yeah,
Just state.
Jessica Insulaco. I think two things I'm hearing. One is the dispersion analysis, which this board requested. PWG provided, and will confirm that that was done for the latest plan, right?
Yes.
So that it
Yes.
reflects the exact plan. So that's one.
Yeah.
Number two, the fertigation program of taking the water that is basically high in nutrient because of the farming up gradient is still gonna happen. That will be used to take up the nitrogen, the grass will take it up, and so that analysis has also been done. The good news is that since the preliminary approval through the Pine Barrens review and all of the work from this team, the amount of fertilized area on the golf course has actually been reduced by 20%. So the numbers are actually going to be even better than what you guys approved before.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And then I'll go in your findings.
Good idea.
Let's move in.
Then we got the public safety comments and the comments from the fire district. Look, to sum it up, obviously they had a lot of questions, it's a big development, but at the end of the day, the key that we're gonna need to get out of them is where the hydrants are going to go.
Right.
They would have to make sure, for example, if there's any sprinkling requirements, So we're working through their comments, and the applicant, is aware of their comments as well, so.
I would think the clubhouse would be sprinkled.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I would be
The
for sure.
condos there, yeah.
So there'll be that coming out of there. Let's see. The Trails Advisory, well, you remember the Trails Advisory. I do actually have a revised report, but I'm using the old one because that's what I gave you. I did incorporate the Trails Advisory comments, and we're gonna go with their recommendations. There's going to be a trail easement on the, well, it's not up there anymore, on the open space that's, being retained by them, to provide an access to link up to the Southampton property next door. And there's going to be a little tap trail, so that goes from the development to provide access for the residents of that development to the townland as well. And they've outlined it for us, and I did put a report, and that will be.
Yeah, I thought they were asking for a handicapped accessible trail.
I don't know why they're, I
The
put
problem
it in
is,
there,
I think
but.
that's on town property, but Wayne, have you looked at that?
Yeah, first of all, I would hope we consider this, not that it's an automatic. Number one, the Trails Advisory Committee had made recommendations during the preliminary, and we identified for this board that really there's a myriad of paths that dirt bikers have had, but over the property, but really as far as a trail system, the town property immediately to our east has a significant trail system there, and property to the south that was purchased by the county and the town. So what resulted was the Trails Advisory in their latest report actually recognizes that. And they delineated a plan that shows a whole trail system on the adjoining townlands, which is good for us. But their recommendations come across, and there's three elements. One, they do continue this request for a trail that goes in an east-west direction within like 500, 800 feet of Sunrise Highway. And that would be across what is not an existing trail over virgin land, basically to get to the property that's currently the sand pit. So we're not sure what the purpose of that is, but number one, but it's in the core. We can't clear in there. We're not going to clear in there. And so we're not willing to grant an easement for that trail. With respect to the other proposal, they, in light of their recommendation, I guess, to the town that they do this trail system to the east, that we provide some access for our residents to connect to that potential trail system. And we're gonna look at that and find out where that might be the best place to do that. We're willing to consider that. The third element was their recognition that to do their whole trail system, they'll need a trailhead for the public. And some part of it related to getting access, I think initially to handicap accessibility, but more importantly, their focus was on the trailhead and having a paved area for people to park and do that. What's interesting about that, though, that's on the town property, that's off-site. It's an off-site improvement. We couldn't do that work. We can't go on the town property and do the work. Town has to go out to bid and have some contractor do that work. We're willing to work with the planning board and explore that a little further. But again, it's an off-site improvement that really this board can't require, but we're willing to consider as we look at this a little further. So that's all I can offer at this point. So we think it's a good idea. I think that's the place that is probably appropriate for the public to be able to access if they're gonna do that, and actually access all that open space that is to our east.
What about the number 3 Spinney Road?
Well, Spinney Road is Spinney Road.
Oh, okay, you just have it as that.
So, yeah, that's not our map, that's Trails Advisory's map. They were just recognizing that Spinney Road currently is a town road.
Can you summarize how some of this open space is gonna be held? I know a good chunk of it's gonna be going.
So one of the
town.
things that's important to our clients is the fact that, and it's the historical use of this property by trespassers and bikers. And it's very concerned, considering how our development will be, is that the open space immediately adjoining our property, which is that just to the north, will remain in the homeowners association, but it'll be subject to a conservation easement, can't be touched, which is not unusual.
So what we're seeing here will all be owned by the HOAs?
Correct.
Okay,
Okay, with the
And-
conservation easement that says can never be touched.
right.
And with respect to the property north of Sunrise, that'll all be deeded to the town, and everything on the Parlato side will all be deeded to the town, except for the parcel that is going to the water authority.
Okay. So you'll maintain control of Spinney Road on?
Well, we don't maintain control of Spinney Road. Spinney Road, you need to know, was laid out in the 1920s.
Yeah.
By the town, and it went from Flanders Road all the way to Lewis Road.
Right.
And of course, in the 70s, it got bisected by the Sunrise Highway. But only the first portion on the south, which is currently paved, was ever opened and worked and paved and maintained by the town. If you've ever been out there, the town put barricades, and they were put up 30, 40 years ago. And it's been maintained that way. In particular, the town highway department doesn't want the liability of vehicles going up there because they don't maintain it. And so that's the current status. But that, you know, the decision over what happens to Spinney Road is the superintendent of highways and
I
town
think
board.
at one of our earlier sessions, not knowing all the background, I wondered about the status, whether it was gonna be requested that that part of Spinney Road be abandoned.
Well, it's interesting, in
Which I still
the
think-
East Quogue GIS, that was suggested.
Right.
And we would welcome it, but that's not up to us. So we've had to plan around it, because there's been no decisions regarding it. And the one thing we've done, just like, you know, people make the comment that our golf course passes over. You know, there is a portion which is going over the portion which is just a dirt path, but we're not taking over the road will remain.
Kind of like
And it's
South
no
Hill
different
Road.
than
So-
national, you know, Shinnecock,
Yeah.
There's several
Southampton golf
roads
courses
that-
where you actually got a paved road
Yeah.
going through the middle of the golf course.
Or you have to, right, you have to cross a public road to
Right.
get
Get
from
to
one
the other
hole
hole.
to another.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that, I mean, we would hope that, and maybe this board can recommend that something happen to Spinney Road. But the point is, if they abandon the road, typically the abandonment goes to the adjoining owners. And what would we do with it? We would make it open space. So we're not proposing to develop it or use it in any manner, and we don't have that choice unless you and the town board can convince them otherwise.
Good. Anthony?
Architecture Review Board, I'll let Claire go through that, that doesn't pertain to the subdivision layout. Health Department's issued an approval for this, we still didn't get any comments from the DEC?
No, no comments from the DEC.
And none from the CAC. I would say that we got a lot of public comments and probably summed up. And then, of course, it's the various subdivision issues, conditions, you know, that would be imposed. First is the updated finding statement, which Claire has presented to the planning board, and we're gonna go through separately. There's gonna be a list of map changes, right? There's gonna be all the final map changes are gonna be required, proper notations, anything that's ultimately required by other agencies, like we normally do. We give a whole list of map changes. And I've been slowly going through them as I go through each. It's monumental, but Claire and I have been working. We talk every day on this one. The applied zoning that's gonna apply to each lot. Remember, this is a cluster plan, so the lots vary in size, and so there's going to be zoning that's going to be applied. They have provided a zoning map. I'm going through it now. I have a lot of questions about it and some changes that I think are gonna be necessary, but that's going to be also included. So we gotta look at the setbacks gonna be applied to each lot. All of the lots, by the way, HOA included. You have to apply zoning to them. And then, of course, we talked about the phasing of development, which is going to be incorporated as well, and, you know, we're working with the applicant on that as well. The Genesis is right, you know, the key is, you can't just go out and just blow through all the vegetation in one shot. It's gotta be done incrementally, and then we gotta say, okay, it's done, it's correct, and then move on to the next phase. So that's good, and I put in here the Conservation Board's recommendation, only because, you know, whether or not that works, and I don't think that it does, and, you know, the applicants we had questions on, But just so the idea that phasing is
Yeah,
really going to be.
and that's why you need
we
the
need
site
it.
engineer.
Of course, the integrated turf health management plan and groundwater monitoring. So those two are also going to be various conditions that they're going to have to address.
I mean, the one thing about fading, I mean, there was some, I don't know where I read it or heard it, about building the golf course incrementally. I don't know anything about golf, but the golf course has to be built in one.
We told them to
Unit.
give us a phasing plan. The phasing plan they gave us doesn't really reflect how you would actually do it, so we did talk previously,
Oh.
we're waiting for this meeting, like, you know, you wanna phase, like, phase one is the roads and the infrastructure, like,
Yeah.
that's how you do it. And then phase two, it should be the golf course or
In
whatever,
its
in
entirety.
one group.
Right.
And then,
Right.
you know, then you follow the site plan, you know, so you'll create the parcels, then you'll do the infrastructure, the roads, then the lots, but you don't have to start clearing house lots,
No,
you know, so why, you know, before you know it, you're in the next year, in the next window, because there's a lot to do, so I don't think it's.
Yeah, I think it is the roads and the golf course first.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think they would agree to that, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is we had a conversation earlier, and we are working on a plan as Janice described, so to make it very clear what the steps are. We call them steps or phases, whatever you wanna call it, but I agree with what you're saying, is the infrastructure first. May include sewage treatment site and maintenance facility, things like that. I'm sure this board would, as you ordinarily do, you wanna see workforce housing be constructed first, so we may even involve clearing of that in the first or second phase, whatever. But I think the point is, we're going to address that, as well as a lot of what Anthony already mentioned today, and what's been discussed. We're trying to do that. There is one question, and I would want some input, because the town engineer, in his report, if I can, raise
Sure,
this.
sure.
It's on the first page of his report, and it's referencing certain pages. And on Claire's report, it's on page 8. I don't know if it's on Anthony's report. And George, you may know specifically what we're talking about, but the town highway department has road and drainage standards, which were, to my recollection, adopted in the 1970s, which this board historically has always been trying to minimize. The standards, if you read them carefully, are designed for something more suburban. In fact, when I was a planner, the minimum width for a town road had to be 30 feet of paving, and so on. But, so, current town engineer references, and he makes a statement, he says, all drainage areas over 8 acres in size shall be designed using a 5-inch storm event. Where overflow will cause property damage, the area shall be designed using an 8-inch storm event. Problem is, that is not the standard that we're talking about, and that he's mixed a little apples and oranges here. So, and it's never been part of the design, but what the standard in their regulations is where there's 8 acres of tributary area, there should be a formal recharge basin, a hole in the ground. And that's what it really says, and that's the first starting point of discussion. Of course, there's alternatives to that, which this board has constantly. I don't know if this board's approved a formal recharge basin since the 90s.
And we're not gonna start now.
The point is the design here, which was promoted by this board, as well as the Pine Barrens, was to use natural drainage and rain gardens and the like, which is all what this whole drainage design is based on. To try to go back and put formal recharge basins would be really changing the whole concept and you know, doing things that aren't what the policy was. And basically, the other point of it, legally, you approved this plan without it. So I just want to be able to, when we go back to the town engineer, say that the board is okay with the current drainage design without all these formal drainage basins, which is what that standard is about. But we do adequately, and by the way, the town engineer, between the preliminary and after we had received approval from the Pine Barrens, we went to the town engineer, as the preliminary approval directed us to, and he told us that the town had changed the standard from a 2-inch rainfall to a 3-inch rainfall. So that caused us to go back and redo and reconfigure, and that actually prompted some of the changes, which actually were changes to the Pine Barrens plan. We had to tweak areas, and we had to move things, shift them over 10 feet, and this kind of thing, which is all the things that the town engineer wanted. So the current plans actually are based on meeting that 3-inch rainfall now. So we want to be able to go to Tom Houghton and basically said we had a discussion with the board and the current design is appropriate. I mean, we're not sure why this came up here, because he then later spends 5 pages talking all about putting this basin here and doing this and more or less accepting the plan as it is.
I think it'd be productive to have staff, when you sit down, Anthony or Claire could.
Yeah, we
sort
want
of
to do that
confirm-
too, because
yeah,
we've been addressing
yeah,
everything else.
From the sentiment of the board, that we sort of, we support, much more supportive of the rain gardens and the natural retention. We're certainly not looking for recharge basins.
I happened to circle those two numbers before you brought this up, because it was new to me too, right? So I'm not sure. And those seem to be applied specifically to ESC 104 and 105. I'm not sure what that is referencing.
I think that's the first page which has drainage calculations on it. I'm not
Oh.
sure, but I think that's what it is. But it's sort of like, well, once you go there, then if we're supposed to design on a 5-inch rainfall, then, you know, what are we doing?
And an 8-inch rainfall, you know.
You know, and the other part of this is a good portion of, you know, there's overflow areas into the golf course. You know,
Yeah.
If it's raining that much, you're not playing golf, but,
Right.
so that's another, unless you're an idiot like me.
We're for lightning schools.
So
Okay.
you guys would talk to Tom?
We're gonna-
Oh, yeah.
We're seeing him Monday, so
Yep.
that's good. I noted that. So again, the groundwater management, the turf management, big components of the plan. I put in there the issue of the accessory golf course use and the seasonal occupancy. We had big discussions about that. Not to get too detailed, but with respect to the accessory golf course use, that was the whole basis of the ZBA application and the subsequent planning board application.
What
So,
page you on?
I'm sorry, 23 of my initial report.
23. Thank you.
So I think that we're gonna have to address that, with some type of covenant that limits the golf course use to the residents within the subdivision and their guests, as
Yeah.
was put on the record. As to this whole seasonal occupancy, we had discussions about this, and you raised a lot of questions, so I gotta flesh that out a little bit, but, I think part of the big issue is that this wasn't going to produce, school children and traffic, so, but we also questioned whether or not the board could impose, limitations on a house, so, I know you raised it at the time.
Well, it's ironic, because some of the public comments was, why are we embracing the seasonality? We look to the shoulder season and enhancing the downtown businesses, and here we are telling people to go away when we most need them. You don't need them in July.
So that we gotta deal with that. The open space and parkland and recreational requirements, so obviously we're gonna go through the numbers, but they meet the 65% open space, plus there's the additional with the clearing restrictions that they noted up to 75%.
Now, their park fee is gonna be satisfied through their on-site amenity, correct?
Right, Janice had said that to me. This was, originally came from my initial review, and I don't, so I'll amend that to properly reflect.
It was also reflected in the preliminary approval.
Right.
I would, with
Can we-
regard to the seasonal nature of the, not to judge it one way or another when that decision was made, but I think the nitrogen loading and all that stuff was calculated based on 9-month occupancy, not year-round occupancy, so.
But the park fee being
Satisfied.
by
The golf course
on-site
and
improvement, well, is that a golf course and all the?
Well, we have
Clubhouse,
on-site
the
recreation.
pools,
that-
all the recreation and the
Pool,
trails.
Tennis. And-
But isn't the
Yes.
park fee normally for public, like,
No.
implements of
No.
public, no, for just on?
It's for the-
for
It's
that
like a
purpose?
percentage of like how many houses and saying, well, you need recreation for the people.
Right.
The new people.
Yeah, for the new
Yeah.
people.
It's 5 acres for every 100 units.
Yeah.
So it's basically 5% in area, but it's the land that's supposed to be available based on the impact of the new residents needing park facilities. And the fact is, you're not just getting land here, you're actually getting active recreation
I understand if you-
facilities that are
The other
for
option
the
of paying a
residents
fee
of this
or,
subdivision. So they're not gonna have an impact on public park resources that you would have in any other subdivision that you're, experiencing or reviewing now, any other place. So.
They don't go to the beach.
And that you did recognize during the.
Well, they have the beach club.
Yeah.
No Lewis Road Park.
The open space, obviously, the Office of Dedication, the open space easements required for the HOA properties, prior to the signature map, proof of the dedication of the properties, because they were different, you have the one on the opposite side of Sunrise, and you have the Parlato North pieces, so that's gonna have to be legal documents submitted. The TDR parcels and the road abandonments, which we discussed. My apologies. We discussed it. Again, we identified that the parcels that are not, the out parcels will still have access to a road, and that we're gonna require the necessary surveys, maps, title information, and certificates of abandonment for the portions of the old file maps. And they also, and maybe they did give it to us, the redemption, extinguishment of the 30 Pine Barrens credits originating from the court preservation.
I thought that was left out of the application.
That's not a requirement.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It was in the PDD, but.
Oh,
never-
okay.
never
You're right,
offered.
you're right. I do remember
We agree
that.
with each other, Wade.
Totally agree. That's 100% right. There was a lot of discussion, so that'll come out. The affordable housing covenant and restriction will have to be done, obviously, in accordance with the town's requirements. We've got the street trees that are gonna have to be included on the road and drainage plans. They'll have to identify any trees that are to remain. Obviously, we're trying to keep up as natural trees as possible. There's gonna be the performance and maintenance bonds that go with this, so that's gonna be part of any approval. We're gonna have the fire district and public safety requirements addressed, covenants and restrictions that are going to apply, no further subdivision, whatever the limitations on the lots are going to be, the various setbacks. Common driveway and utility easements for those lots that share that'll be a typical standard requirement. The HOA documentation, that's gonna be required. And I put other agency approvals. I didn't know what I meant by that, but just in case.
Yeah.
Just in case I missed something there. And by the way, I do have more in the report, so I will get that. Claire got it hers to you, and I will send you another one for our next discussion.
Yeah, you'll get an updated report at the end of next week.
Claire, speaking of updates,
Yep.
where are we with the traffic?
So, you retained, Ray Tobias from McLean, which
That's
is
right,
great.
yep.
He is prepared to come on November 10th.
November
So,
10th.
he will have a report probably sometime next week, and I'll forward it to you and the applicants, so we can
Okay.
have a productive discussion about, the change in the access. That'll be an update to the findings, obviously.
Great.
Back to him, because, just make it all about subdivisions. So the applied zoning, that is the question, one of the questions for you. We're gonna have to go through them. They're asking for relief on the lots, on a number of issues, the setbacks, coverage, which is usually 20% on lots. They're asking between
30 and 45%.
30 and 45%
I had that
coverage.
noted, that's an issue.
Some of the lots are as low as 5,000 square feet, which is not something we can compare to zoning. We don't have an R10, we don't have an R5, right? We have an R10, which is our lowest one. We talked about this a little bit before, but I think it's something we need to get a handle on. So we're probably gonna, I asked them for like this describes it. I asked them for like a chart so we can actually go through it and visualize where these are, in the different lots. Some of them could be tiny. Yeah, color coded. Then we can talk about specifics, whether you'd be comfortable giving a better, more relief on the coverage. That might not be an issue, but one of the things that they're asking for is no pyramid at all. So I don't know if that's in common. I've never heard of that for residential lots, though in I think HO allows it. Well, you are able to modify anything in a cluster plan, so you can modify that.
I was gonna say, chap 247 gives us broad latitude.
Well, I guess the only
We did
question-
ask for some architecture, so you could see that.
And we
Right.
do
And you
have
should
that.
take a look at that. That's
And
important
we
to
also
look at, so you
recognize
know
that
what
this
you're
is
getting.
This isn't a public house.
very much an internal
Correct.
Right, this isn't.
Yeah,
uh,
but
operating
they
on public
have
road.
some, we were concerned about that, and they had some architecture, which is unusual really outside of a site plan for the housing, but so you can
Yeah.
see that and feel, good about it, or whatever opinion you have on it, just take a look at it.
Wayne, do you have any,
I was gonna say, from day one, this is a unique development, from whatever you've seen before, and it's a clustered development, and we have a variety of housing, not just your standard cookie cutter, 1 acre lot, put a house on it, which is your typical subdivision. Look at the Pines. Here, we have, from day one, we've had club cabins and village lots and so on, and we've always provided, this is the type of building or structure that's going to do that. What has evolved through time is we've always shown you where these buildings are going to be placed. The question is, what kind of ownership? We could have done everything as a condominium, or we could have turned around and put separate lots. So what we've done is we've placed the land use, the housing, the type of housing, and depending on whether it's a village lot or so on, all the way up to the estate lots, we then plotted the lots on top of that. But the problem with that is, as Claire has identified, is once you go to the building department to get your permit, they're gonna look and say, well, you're on lot, whatever it is, and you need to meet zoning. What is that zoning? Well, the planning board clustered and modified it. So for example, you're on a 5,000 square foot lot, and you've got a building that's only 10 feet away, you can't meet any pyramid requirement. So that's why we put it on there, as that's the modification. And we went lot by lot, and we do have those maps, color-coded maps, that show, you have the architecture of the buildings and the style of buildings, and like I said, the village and club lots and things like that are something that our client is going to build, okay? We're not gonna sell you the lot and hope that you build what that is. On the larger lot, like the estate lots, they're gonna be available for sale. But of course, the review of the architecture is gonna be subject to our internal homeowners association architectural review even before you get to the town. But they're the only ones that, we're not gonna actually do the construction on. Everything else we're constructing, so we're gonna be able to control everything, number one. Number two is, we need to be able to go to the building department and say, when we're building this house on a village lot that's only 5,000 square feet, we meet the zoning. And that's what we did. We looked at every element of zoning when it starts with clearing, fertilized vegetation, setbacks, lot coverage, pyramid, you name it, measuring height. Because when you get small lots like that, especially in the area that's already disturbed, that's where we focus the village lots and so on, there's grading that takes place.
Yeah.
And when you measure height, it's supposed to be measured from the existing grade. Well, we're gonna grade and create, pads in those areas for those buildings, although they're gonna be set back, but they're village lots. And that's why the zoning needs to be modified and identified, so that we have the building department on board when we apply for the permits on those. So we're happy to go through that. Maybe another work session, we can focus on that one element or show the plans, but I think
Yeah, I just want to be focused on it, because we'll need an easy document at the end of the day for the building department just to open up and say.
I sit with the zoning board, so we get a lot of pyramid applications, so I don't wanna, because we got hearings coming up and we'll talk about it. But when you say no pyramid, that's okay, but does that mean you can encroach it by 6,000 cubic feet, 2,000 cubic feet, 10,000 cubic feet? Just eliminating it provides no zoning control over it then. So that'd be my only question.
That's kind of, so do we create new zoning?
I have to
Or do
think about how we
waive
deal with the
existing,
pyramid.
come in and say, we're giving you a waiver on this, or how
You're actually
would that
creating
work?
new
It's
zoning
like
for
lot
this
by
project.
lot zoning.
You're doing it
for-
specifically
Wait, I
for
think
this
you'll do a
project.
section, right? Lots 1 through
It's
10,
not that
it'll
that's
be
gonna
like
be
sections.
Similarly sized lot.
Yes.
And some of it is
And
based.
we're okay to condition, Anthony, where your concern is, again, we're building on all those small lots. The freedom is gonna be on the larger lots, and so the question is, what are we building? And if necessary, we have floor plans and basic elevations that, we could say they're restricted to this type of building on that lot, so, we're okay with that.
Something, you understand what I was getting at there.
Where could we see these renderings?
Oh, I have them, and they should be online now, but, If you want me to specifically, like, send it to you again with the box, I can. So we've got.
And we have a separate work session just to talk about this.
Yeah, if I may.
We'll talk about everything.
I know you have a
That's
meeting
why we
at
said
6
you better
o'clock,
start
which
doing
I
this,
have to
like, in
attend. I
advance.
have to go
They
back
have
and give my
hearings then?
affidavits.
Yes, they have hearings,
You
3
have
minutes.
hearings,
6 o'clock, yeah.
so we can't.
Yeah, we have to.
We have
I'm
to
wondering
give you a
if
break.
this board is willing, I think I heard that you're willing to do a future session like this.
Yeah.
But can I just suggest maybe you do a morning work session so that you're
I
not
was gonna- I
stuck
thought
in the
that-
middle of your
Do you wanna
meeting
do it
or
on the
something?
10th?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we used to have those 10 AM sessions where we would just block
I
out.
don't know your
The
schedule.
question
Well, what
is-
about
the
town
question is,
board?
how
I
do
thought
we-
they're
Yeah.
in here.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah.
Well, we can hold it downstairs, but my question is noticing.
You just have to notice, you haven't noticed the 10th yet.
You just have to have the notice that your meeting.
Yeah, we just have to
special
put
meeting.
something in the,
Special
in the
meeting.
paper.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
haven't done it
special
yet.
meeting.
We
you
could
wanna
do that.
vote on that?
Yeah, I mean, that would be great.
And
And
maybe
would-
do it
could-
downstairs.
Noticing.
Yep.
How would we get the noticing then?
Well,
We'd have to
We'll
do
give it
that
to-
tomorrow.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
no, we don't have to, we can put it in the paper just in advance. It doesn't have to be 10 days in.
Oh, okay.
It's just in
okay.
advance.
So should we adopt a resolution?
Yes.
Christine, setting that hearing?
Just at the hearing. We're not.
It's not a hearing, it's
I
a
mean,
work
I mean,
session.
special-
AM work
Special
special-
session,
10
10 AM.
10 AM?
On November 10th.
And if you
On
guys
November
decide
10th.
it's
Are you guys good with that?
11:15, it's
Craig?
11:15, that's
I was
fine.
gonna say,
Don't know.
should we?
Would it be in here? Because I was gonna say.
No, town board is
Town
in
board.
here.
It's the
Town
town
board.
board.
Dennis, before we do
Downstairs.
this, seeing that we meet at 2, can we do something that would transition us from, instead of being at 10 and finishing at 10:30 or 11 o'clock and having 3 hours?
No, it'd be
You
10
could
to.
go
I
straight till
think-
2 on this stuff.
You're an
I-
have plenty
Well,
to
we
go
used
to.
to- well, we used to
I
go
demand
10 to
lunch then.
noon or 10 to 12:30 and then to take a break and then come back at 2.
Yeah.
That's the
Okay.
way we used to
I
do it.
suggest we do it at CPI for lunch.
Too bad Kristen left already.
But I'm wondering if we're allowed to do a Zoom because this warrants, no,
Why not?
okay.
They can't do a Zoom work session.
Special, because
You
it's
can
a
do
special
both,
meeting.
but people have to still be, whether you do.
We
it
have
here or
4,
not.
no, we'll get 4 people, but I'm thinking people like Craig, or who might not be able to get into the meeting, as long as we have a quorum of 4, can some of the members Zoom in?
You've
You
got to
can
have
only
a
do
bad
it,
knee.
the same rules apply, whether it's, so if there's an issue of health or whatever, the same rules apply.
Yeah.
But special meeting doesn't cover, doesn't fall under that, guys,
So
okay.
working doesn't count.
Yeah.
Too bad.
Have a bad back.
So do we do 12 to 2 and like bring in
No,
lunch?
we would do,
or-
oh, you
No.
want, you think
That
it's,
way you could be at work at least for
12
half
to
a
2?
day.
What-
right?
well, what works for your schedule?
Put it together and I'll try to figure it all out. I might be able
You know,
to
give
like
us enough
swap a day
time
or
that we
something.
don't have to
Mm-hmm,
rush it.
yeah.
Yeah, don't-
Okay, so 10 AM. But
Let's
if
make
you
it 10,
decide
that's
11
fine.
is better for you, at least we started the 10 AM, it's fine. So we can put
I
it
would
at the
just
10.
point out, if you're doing Zoom, you're not taking any actions.
We
So you're
can't
not
do-
We
voting.
can't do Zoom.
So you
Can't
can
do
do
Zoom.
Zoom, you can watch just like any member of the
It's
public.
an open meeting law.
Yeah, but you notice it.
It's not,
But it's not taking any action.
The members
It's-
have to be here.
Yeah, you got.
We need 4 members here.
and it's not
No.
a matter of the
You're not
the
voting,
time,
yes.
it's
You
a
have-
matter of.
you
We're not taking any
the place
official
You have to
matters,
be-
being able to get over
They
it.
have to be
That,
here.
yeah.
We need 4 members
Did
here.
did you hear I got a new hip?
Sorry, it takes so much time.
I got a new hip.
Are we gonna aim for 10 a.m.
4 weeks
on the
ago.
Do we need a resolution?
How you doing?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Hold on.
Really?
A
Yeah.
motion to.
That's great.
Yeah, last meeting I Zoomed.
Good.
Good, lots of good
What
hiking in your future.
Sorry.
We're almost done here.
Special work
We need a
session.
resolution to set a special work session for the planning board on Thursday, November 10th, 10 AM. Do we have a motion?
Yeah.
Motion by Kate,
Second.
second by George, all in favor, aye,
Aye.
opposed? 6 yes, 1 absent, motion to adjourn by.
No, we can't adjourn yet.
Oh, signatures.
Signatures.
I just want, before you go into, I just wanted to just say like how proud I am of Claire and Anthony of how much work has gone into
Bravo.
all
Oh my
of
God,
this.
a
And
ton of
just
work.
how
Yeah.
on top of everything else.
We're
it
Yeah.
is.
For
I
sure.
recognize, like,
Yeah.
Bravo, bravo.
Thank you.
We see it.
So let's do sign, thanks,
Okay,
Janet.
so I signed
plans?
Claire's Schwenk, Fink, and Miller,
Okay,
but I haven't signed Klug Bond because I was not given it.
well, you've got 11 minutes, so off you go. Okay, now motion to adjourn
Motion.
by George, second by Kate. We'll see you in
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, guys.
Can I call you the hipster?